Xiaolong only tamed a few snail larvae, yet it could make an experienced old man break into a sweat just because of those seemingly harmless larvae, which are actually animals that make everyone fear. But what astonished the old man even more is that Xiaolong not only knew their egg incubation time, but also understood their reproductive patterns. This made the old man extremely excited. He not only declared he would teach all of his martial arts, but also wanted to marry his beautiful daughter to him. But when transferring to the Jiatu Shuyan sect, he realized things were not as easy as they seemed. Without further ado, let's get into the main content. On a day when it was pouring rain, a group of martial artists, coming from an unknown place, entered the Dao Hall and asked the headmaster if he was there, saying, "May we trouble you a bit before the unending rain in this desolate place?" And yet, a boy appeared right here. The group was also surprised to see this young teenager. Seeing him standing blocking the entrance, the leader of the group understood and stood still. He had fierce red eyes, about 50 years old, with a stern face examining this desolate place like the Dao Hall. And yet there was someone. Then he spoke, "Young fellow, could you allow us to stay for a night to shelter from the rain?" The main character remained silent, staring at the group, and he hesitated, pondering who these people actually were. Though he was still young, they performed the ritual, clasping hands respectfully and using formal language. Could it be that they thought he was a minor Taoist priest guarding this desolate but he didn't seem to look like bad people. After thinking, he clasped his hands respectfully and spoke, "I am also just someone who has been residing in this desolate Dao Hall for a few years. You can stay anywhere you like. However, that structure is where I am using, so please do not disturb. I hope you choose another place to rest." He also understood and clasped his hands in response, saying, "Thank you, young fellow. You are very polite. I will do so." Then he turned to instruct his disciples, "Everyone, listen up and move quickly. Do not approach the young fellow's quarters. Find another place to shelter from the rain. Do you understand?" After hearing, they obediently listened and obeyed the master. Because the rain was getting heavier, the martial group hurriedly ran to find shelter. The main character stood still, observing the badges stuck on each person's clothing, and so they are all from the same family clan. He was somewhat curious, not knowing what kind of people they were. But now there was something more important. The main character politely bowed to their master, then quickly left. He stepped into his main room. Excitement was clearly visible on his cute face. "Oh, my love, it's time to eat now," he said as he walked and hopped like meeting his beloved. Looking into the jars full inside the room, he opened the lid and looked inside with a joyful and delighted face. Inside the jar were insects that looked like crickets. The main character held the jar of insects in his hands eagerly and said, "Almost too late now. Everyone is hungry, right?" Then he proceeded to open another jar and saw inside a hakta, a species of spider living in South China. This is a large spider that can grow up to 20 centimeters with distinctive colors reminiscent of hak ho. He happily used chopsticks to feed crickets to it, saying, "Hak eat a lot, otherwise you wouldn't know how things would turn out." Seeing it devour his food made him very happy. At first, it was only as small as a fingernail, but now it has molted twice and grown this big. Hak is really happy. Seeing his pet had eaten to fullness, he continued to go to a storage box next to him. The main character opened the box It turned out to contain the king of lizards, specifically the rainbow gecko. This is also a native species in this area. The characteristic of this species is the striped patterns on their body. He revealed his obsession that no one knew, exclaiming joyfully, "In past lives, finding and purchasing you was very difficult because there was no source for importing, but here you can be found everywhere. Ha truly lives for the joy of watching you." Then he fed it. Suddenly, the gecko jumped up and bit his hand. Causing him pain, he flinched and shouted loudly. The origin of the beginning that led the main character to raise these creatures was his passion and fascination with insects, and especially the rare reincarnation that occurred because he was previously a streamer in the modern era. Originally, with the fame of a streamer with millions of followers, a streamer specializing in feber creatures. With the images of creatures before him, It was not too hard to say the main topic was insects and poisonous animals, but the problem he encountered when preparing to post new content was the live broadcast organized to celebrate reaching 1,000,000 followers. The content of that broadcast was the 10 most dangerous poisonous snakes in the world. The viewers of the live broadcast continuously asked him, "Where is the black mamba? Why don't we see it? It must not be the real one from Africa. Feber has tricked us. Hurry, show us the snakes. Let's try biting once, just once, try biting once. Why not?" Immediately after, a user with the nickname BellG Flyback Home was blocked. Someone also curiously asked, "If the black mamba hits the head, does it die?" Feber knew very well that among them, this one was famous as the most dangerous species due to its aggressive nature. Then the idea of going all the way to Africa to find the black mamba became a disaster. Feber sat on a chair, sighing to the fans. "There's nothing. Really no black mamba. It's not a wild cat at the end of the alley." After saying that, he stood up and told everyone, "Let me take a break, and then I'll continue searching." The audience, unable to wait for the results, all excitedly responded, "You go ahead and rest. We'll stay here and wait. Hurry up and continue searching." Feber, momentarily feeling thirsty as if destined by heaven, approached the cabinet again to find himself a bottle to quench his thirst. He complained, "Why hasn't it appeared yet?" Meanwhile, there was a snake coiled up on the refrigerator roof, so I was bitten in the blink of an eye when I felt the pain from the snake's ambush. Faber was startled and panicked, shouting loudly to the audience. Some were thrilled, while others were worried, asking, "What number do you call in Africa instead of 119 when bitten?" Because of the snake's extremely potent venom, Faber felt dizzy and collapsed unconscious in his apartment. At the same time, he admitted that I had died immediately. Back to reality, at this moment, he was still busy feeding his lizard. The main character thought to himself, when searching, he didn't see any signs, so why would it hide on the refrigerator roof? The young landlord suddenly appeared at his room door without any prior notice. A moment later, he began speaking and asked, "Young martial artist, is anyone inside?" Fearing his peculiar hobby would be discovered, he hurriedly placed the lizard back into the cupboard and quickly closed it. Then he came out in front to continue the conversation with him, hesitantly asking, "What's the matter?" With his amiable appearance, the landlord quickly replied, "We're truly grateful to be given shelter from the rain. Would you like to join us for dinner?" Then he added, "We just hunted a deer." Upon hearing this, his eyes lit up and he stammered, "A deer? Really?" Upon hearing deer meat, tears of happiness welled up in his eyes. He thought about the early days when he would skin and roast his own pets to eat raw just to survive. He apologized. "Sorry, all this time I've only been eating snakes and lizards." He jumped up in joy and shouted, "If you could share some with me, I'd be very grateful." The man from the street came out happily, turned his back to guide him through the rain, laughing loudly, and replied, "All right, let's go together." After a while, the rain finally stopped, and the bright moon stretched its light through the dark clouds. At this moment, everyone was gathered around a fire, with a large deer carcass placed on it. Seeing how delicious the meat looked in front of him, he couldn't hold back anymore. His eyes widened, and saliva began to flow uncontrollably. Seeing him showing such desire, the landlord didn't say a word, and just silently observed everything. Finally, he told him that the meat probably needed a bit more time to cook, and asked, "While we wait, can I ask you a few things?" Upon hearing this, he blushed in embarrassment for losing face in front of so many people. He thought he was just gazing and forgot his manners. The main character quickly and politely responded, "Yes, sir. Please feel free to ask." A bit shy, he began to ask, "Do you live alone in this southern mountain? How old are you this year?" After thinking for a while, his answer must have surprised him. He said, "Probably around 10 to 15 years old." He curiously asked again, "Is it around there?" It's not very appropriate to reveal his entire identity to someone he just met, so he thought he had to flatter him. After thinking, the main character replied, "Since last week when I had a head injury as a child, I no longer clearly remember the memories before that." This touching story made him exclaim, "What a tragic story." He curiously asked, "So you've been living alone here all this time?" The main character quickly responded, "Yes, because I have no other skills. I live here by catching snakes, skinning them, and selling them to make a living." His face began to swell red, replying, "Why would a young martial artist like you risk going out to catch snakes? Because you have extensive experience with poisonous species from your past life, it must be quite easy for you." He then bowed his head and replied, "I'm familiar." While the two were conversing, an elderly man with graying hair arrived, carrying a plate full of meat. He said to him, "I've brought my main dish earlier. Now take this first." Upon hearing that, his eyes became brighter than car headlights. He clasped both hands and looked happy. The old man cheerfully looked at him with the steaming meat in his hand and said, "You seem very hungry, so I said that." He also politely and quickly replied, "Thank you, sir." Holding the piece of meat in his hand, he excitedly told the old man, "It's been a long time since I last ate meat." After saying that, he immediately took a bite, stuffing his mouth. The more he chewed, the more pleased he felt, thinking, "This is true happiness." Seeing him eat so eagerly, with the meat still hot, the old man happily joked, "Young martial artist, you're eating very deliciously." A moment later, the man who had come out earlier spoke again. "Young martial artist, listen while you eat." His normally calm face suddenly became tense as he said, "We're looking for something. Have you seen anything unusual around here?" He curiously asked again, "Do you mean something unusual?" Seeing him puzzled by his words, he had no choice but to ponder, wondering if he should say it or not. From the other side, the old man unexpectedly spoke up. "This young martial artist has granted me a small favor. Can you tell him about it?" He continued, "Unfortunately, I didn't know, but encountering a calamity is dangerous. Moreover, since you live alone, you probably haven't told anyone." Hearing the adult's words, he agreed, replying, "Indeed, my father's words are very true." After finishing, he continued saying, "We're looking for a green-spotted Ngo Kong." He was surprised and curiously asked again, "Ngo Kong with green spots." In his mind, he wondered, "Is Ngo Kong a centipede?" He described its appearance briefly. "It must be called the Than Ban Ngo Kong. Its size is quite large, so perhaps you've seen it before." He was impressed hearing about its size and wondered, "Is it really that big?" Then, quickly becoming curious in excitement, he asked again, "If it's big, how big, based on what has been recorded?" He pondered and replied, "If it's a mature specimen, then." His next words caused him to panic, turning pale, and his mouth gaped when he heard him simply reply, "It's probably big enough to swallow a young martial artist easily." Hearing the abstract size description, he thought, "I just thought it's like going back a few hundred years, but—" His face began to change color, thinking to himself, "Who would have thought there could be such a huge centipede? From the beginning, it's like another world, so the man beside me can't be blamed." It seems this young martial artist is already scared. The elderly man with graying hair calmly stroked his beard and said, "Don't worry, we're here to catch it." Hearing that someone wants to catch it, he curiously asked, "Do you plan to catch it to raise it?" Hearing such an innocent question, both the old man and the other man involuntarily asked. After saying that, the old man curiously stroked his beard, then he laughed heartily, saying loudly, "Raising the Than Ban Ngo Kong? Sounds interesting." The man beside him tried to hold back his laughter, replying, "Young martial artist, that's really interesting." The old man quickly revealed the main purpose of today's trip. "How could we raise such a thing? We're planning to use it to brew medicine." Hearing that, his face, once excited, suddenly turned cold as he asked, "What do you mean?" He showed a troubled expression, thinking, "I thought he was a business partner, but he's actually a medicine dealer." Just as he thought, he asked, "Do you really want to do that?" The old man's face became serious upon hearing the seemingly simple question. He grasped his hand tightly and said, "It might be, but my granddaughter is currently bedridden due to a severe illness. So, the Thanban Kong is the last option to help his granddaughter." The old man said, "Only the internal essence of the Ngokong can save my granddaughter's life, so I'm trying to find it." He became surprised and replied, "If it's for your granddaughter, then—" He explained, "Simply put, the internal essence is a crystal formed from the accumulation of chi energy within the bodies of animals, becoming a mystical spirit. The one beside me is my granddaughter." He quickly grasped the situation, put his hand to his chin, and said, "The child is in the most critical stage of life, so they want to try every method." Even though centipedes aren't medicine, a parent's love, seeing the father so deeply loving his child to the extent of crossing forests and streams to find a seemingly non-existent creature, he felt a bit sympathetic, thinking, "Poor purebred centipede, but since I've been invited to eat meat, I'll help. After thinking, he began to speak about the NGO Kong. Hearing that he seemed to have a clue, he immediately changed his demeanor and quickly asked, "Have you ever seen it before?" He replied, "No, I haven't ever encountered it." After hearing that, he returned blankly, saying, "I see." A moment later, he suddenly appeared dangerous and continued, "However, even though I don't know what the Thanban Kong is." Hearing that, he turned around in confusion, feeling a bit hopeful. Looking in his direction, he saw that he seemed very confident as he widened his eyes and softly smiled, saying, "I can guess where it is. With my experience from my past life, I fabber. Although I died after being bitten by a snake, with the experience I have accumulated, I can confidently say that I am more knowledgeable about my own venom than anyone else." He stated, out of approximately 8.7 million living species, about 20,000 are known to be poisonous. I have stored all their knowledge in my head, species by species, and centipedes are no exception among them. With my knowledge, as for the poison, it lies neatly within my palm here. Wei Xiaolong holds the book and concentrates all his spirit. Each page of the book continuously flips, emitting a magical light. After a while, he closes the book. He gently opens his eyes happily and says, "Found it." Xiaolong winks excitedly and says, "So if it's a big centipede, I think I know where it is." Duongsan, astonished, asks, "What? Really? Why is Duongquan also involved? If that's the case, where could it be?" He furrows his brows in thought. Then he looks at the two, puzzled. "Do you not know which area you have searched and at what time? Could you not tell me?" Although not knowing why Xiaolong asked that, Duongsan also replies, "We have searched to the north and east around here, mainly searching during the day. In the north, we primarily searched along the riverbanks." He strokes his chin and murmurs, thinking to himself, "As expected, there must be a reason why you haven't found it." The two are stunned when hearing Xiaolong say that, realizing it would be impossible to detect it. Duongquan chokes up, saying, "What? Of course not." He urgently asks, "Can you give me the reason?" He smiles slyly, "It's okay." Regarding centipedes belong to the class Chilopoda, the subclass Scolopendromorpha. They have a wide range of activity and are cold-blooded animals, so they need a hiding place to maintain stable temperature and humidity. Interestingly, unlike most insects that have waterproof cuticles, centipedes have a weak waterproof layer with breathing holes on their exoskeleton surface, so they actually do not like places with. Although they require a high humidity environment, they do not favor areas with a lot of water. Conversely, if there is no humidity, they cannot survive for long. This is a unique characteristic of centipedes. Sitting on the porch, Xiaolong continues to provide information. Therefore, the Scolopendra species, with their large bodies, are unlikely to dwell in dense forests or near rivers. Duongquan feels puzzled. "I can't believe it. So the places that crickets like are not rotten wood crevices." He says, "You mentioned that some small centipede species can be found in such places. So you must be referring to a big centipede, right?" Xiaolong continues to babble. "If its body is large, then fallen trees in the forest or rocks by the river are not suitable places because there is nowhere for it to hide." After hearing this, Duongsan and Duongquan look at each other and nod gently. Sitting beside him, the elder worries. "If we find it in the place you mentioned, it will definitely be dangerous." He smiles slyly. Pointing to the mountain ahead, Xiaolong confirms west direction, and he advises them to try searching in the western Rocky Mountain as it is better. Centipedes usually rest under warmed rocks during the day and only come out at night. At night, moonlight illuminates the steep mountain cliffs. On the mountain cliffs, everyone assigns themselves to search separately. At the mountain summit, Duongsan stands steadfastly observing. He furrows his brows, thinking deep. At this moment, someone runs up and calls out to the master. "Is there any chance that the young knight's instructions are wrong?" He ponders. Jumping down to the ground, Duongsan orders, "Let's rest here today. Fire a signal flare to call the search teams to regroup." The soldiers receive the order, "Yes, master." A signal flare is fired. It blazes brightly in the sky. Everyone rests and sighs, "Oh heavens, we're so exhausted. I just hope the young knight's words are correct." They take turns discussing, "Why can't we ever find this damn centipede? It really is so. That young knight seems quite smart." Suddenly, they hear noises from Duongsun's side. They see him gritting his teeth and trembling, saying, Duong'an, the child, is considered the most outstanding genius in the history of Duong sect. Could it be that the heavens have truly abandoned us? At that moment, there is a shout announcing that the noble master has returned. Everyone simultaneously greets, Master has returned. Duongguan approaches Duongsun. He inquires about the situation. Today you didn't find anything? He replies, Yes, sir. Then he asks again, Master also didn't find anything? Duongguan coughs softly. It's okay. But the situation isn't very promising. Duong'an can only sustain for at most 3 more months. I don't know if we can find her within the next 10 days. The two remain silent, sharing the same concern. He suggests to the master, Tomorrow, let's try searching to the south, since we haven't found any traces yet. He sighs and agrees, All right. Suddenly, Duongquan, surprised, asks loudly, Is there nothing? Then unexpectedly, he slaps his forehead and laughs loudly. That's right, so that's how it is. Why didn't I realize it before? Yes, it's this place. Seeing a glimmer of hope, Duongsan immediately asks, It seems you just discovered something, right, master? As expected, Duongquan replies, No, it's not as you say. I haven't seen any traces or felt anything. He hesitantly asks again, Is that right? He confirms because there's nothing. Then adds, That's why I have the feeling it's here. Looking around, Duongquan speaks, Have you found any traces on this rocky mountain in the past 3 days? Duongsan immediately replies, No, we haven't found any traces. He strokes his chin and says, I haven't found any signs of wild animals' feces or territorial markings. As he finishes speaking, he suddenly gasps, Could it be? Seeing that Duongsan had recognized the issue, the old man became excited. That's right. How is it possible that there are no signs of animals on this vast rocky mountain? He tightened his grip and muttered, This is its territory. Duongquan cheerfully replied, Exactly, so all the surrounding animals have either fled or become prey for the Ngok Kong. The old man patted Duongsan on the shoulder. He then comforted him. Surely, then Ban Ngok Kong is here. Now we can save Nganyi. He looked like he had found the light and began to speak. Finally, before he could finish, the ground shook violently. Everyone panicked and shouted, What's happening? Duongquan shouted, It's humans! In their fear, they had stomped them into the flames without realizing it. Right where the fire was burning fiercely, a loud explosion echoed through the sky. Duongquan and Duongsan stood stunned, shouting, What is that? A sharp claw appeared, striking the ground forcefully. The soldiers, scared, stammered, What's this? What's that? Rocks and soil began to fall towards them. The old man exclaimed, That's... Before their eyes, a giant centipede began to take shape. With its many legs and head visible, a colossal centipede appeared, threatening then Bangok Kong. At the same time, inside the fortress, chaotic sounds were heard. Piao Long, wake up! He lay down, puzzled. How big is that centipede to scare everyone like this? I said we were just looking, yet it overturned the entire mountain. Piao Long sneered. A centipede that large could swallow me whole? He was truly excited. I'm really curious. Let's go. The nighttime mountain scene. Everyone surrounded the body of the defeated centipede. Duongquan opened the box and said, This is the inner egg of Thanbangok Kong. Everyone around was excited, but the old man covered his hands, moved, and said, We can now save Nganyi. Duongsan, completely exhausted, said, Father, please lead the uninjured warriors to Tushian first. Duongquan wondered, What do you mean by that? He looked into the distance and replied, If there's a debt or vengeance, we must settle it. Engrave the gratitude in our blood. And Duongsan asked, Isn't there still work to be done here? The old man patted his head and recalled, Almost made a big mistake because I was so focused on Nganyi. Duongquan put away the box containing the inner egg and said, Right, we should treat the young fellow warrior as a valued guest. If he desires anything, we should fulfill it. He agreed, Let the injured warriors stay in the village to recover while I go meet the young fellow warrior. Duongsan added, Perhaps the young fellow warrior also thinks that he is eager to hear news about us. Piao Long had strange creatures wrapped around him. Despite them clinging to him, he said, What should I do about this? Just after one night, he had become then Bangok Kong's guardian. Inside a certain room, Piao Long muttered, Come home, clean the eggs, and place them beside the pillow. The next morning, upon waking up, he suddenly saw the little ones crawling on him. The little darlings have all hatched." He looked at them round and adorable, with ears like rabbits. Piao Long restrained his emotions and muttered, "I anticipated this, but I didn't expect them to hatch so quickly." He glanced at a little one on his cheek, holding him while sleeping. Suddenly, the child slipped and fell. He panicked and caught the child, saying, "Hey kids, stay back a bit. Let me." Piao Long muttered, "The problem is, I don't know if these little ones see me as their parent." One child kept biting his shirt, saying they cling to him and won't leave. The night before, in a mountain crevice somewhere, this type of divine insect was large enough to swallow him whole. If he couldn't endure this, he wouldn't be as strong as Faber. At Thembangok Kong's secret hideout that he found, the closer he got to the cave, the more something terrifying he felt. He kicked something and shouted loudly, "What kind of monster is this? What hard-shelled bug is as big as a human fist?" The torch in Piao Long's hand fell to the ground. One side of him knelt on the ground, and the other side he was. Piao Long wiped his sweat with his hand and said, "Lucky." He looked into his bag and said, "Anyway, there are still 3 eggs safe." Piao Long rubbed his head and muttered, "Lucky that the rain has stopped a bit. If it hadn't, we wouldn't have been able to save." Suddenly, he noticed something. Piao Long stood up abruptly and said, "This is not the time to hesitate. We must quickly return and clean the eggs." He tightly fastened the egg bag around his waist and said, "All right." With an excited face, Piao Long shouted, "My little Ngok wait a moment. Brother will wash and clean you up right away." After that, the hatched eggs were sitting idle. Although he hadn't seen then Ban Ngok Kong alive, saving these eggs was already a great luck. The adorable little ones clung to Piao Long, limiting his freedom a bit. Piao Long said, "Hey, you all, aren't you planning to leave me?" Those mischievous kids crawling down your back muttered, knowing that until your second reincarnation, you wouldn't need to eat, so I wouldn't have to worry about food. But clinging to and killing me like this is really troublesome. Xiaolong couldn't help but realize that if he went into the water, perhaps you all would leave me on your. With a sinister smile, his face showed malicious intent, causing Ban Nogong to panic. "You said we need to take a bath for a while." Early in the morning, Duong-san was bandaging his wounds and heading somewhere. He walked out. He went to a room and loudly called out to see if the junior brother was inside. Standing outside the door, he called for the junior brother. Duong-san saw nothing moving inside the room, so he reached out his hand to the door. He pushed the door open and said, "Junior brother, let me in." Looking around with no one in sight, Duong-san said, "Herbs, jars, and medicinal materials." He looked at those herbs, wondering if the junior brother was proficient in medicine. Duong-san sighed and muttered that it was impolite to enter the empty room so casually. He turned to leave, saying he would come back later. Suddenly, Duong-san heard strange noises. Curious, he turned around and muttered, "What is this sound?" Behind Duong-san were large jars. He remained silent and gently approached. Duong-san opened the lid of one jar. His face showed astonishment as he exclaimed, "What is this?" Duong-san saw a spider holding something white in its mouth and muttered, "Chi-chu." He looked at the medicine cabinet and said, "No way." Duong-san walked over and opened a compartment to take a look. He saw an orange-striped insect and muttered, "Soliton." He couldn't help but be surprised by what he had just seen. In this jar were several brown bugs, and the other container held strange eggs. In this box were dried snake corpses. Duong-san was astonished and muttered about lizards, as if he had stepped into a place filled with all sorts of terrifying poisonous creatures. He couldn't believe. In his mind, Duong-san wondered if he was breeding poisonous creatures and making them reproduce. Even the famous Duong family, known for their expertise in poisons and medicine, only managed to control and extract toxins. They couldn't have figured out how to use eggs to breed them like this. He closed the door and stepped out of the room, muttering that only a small opportunity had allowed him to save the life of his beloved daughter. Duong-san tightly grasped the hand and said that the true opportunity was indeed this junior brother. Suddenly behind him there was a call, "Old mentor." He answered, and Xiaolong hurried over, asking how his arm was like that and if he was injured somewhere else. Duong-san placed his hand on his shoulder and replied, "It's nothing serious. Actually, what I should say is..." Suddenly, he felt something and muttered, "What is this?" Behind him appeared a malicious aura. The door was broken open slowly, and someone's shadow emerged. A monster appeared, exuding murderous intent. With a terrifying face, it laughed, revealing sharp teeth. Duongson quickly pushed Xiaolong aside and shouted loudly, "Junior brother, get out of here." Xiaolong didn't understand what was happening and asked. The monster assumed an attacking stance. Wen Tang swung at it, but every strike was blocked, and the monster charged straight at Duongson. It focused its strength on his arm and delivered a powerful, blocking one of Wen Tang's attacks. Duongson was severely injured and the monster punched violently, causing Duongson fell to the ground. He wiped the blood from his mouth with his hand and muttered, "A master on par with my father." Duongson stammered, "Junior brother, go!" As soon as he finished speaking, Xiaolong was grabbed by the neck and he gasped for breath, calling out in broken tones. The monster grabbed him by the neck and laughed loudly. He laughed and said, "I heard those scoundrels went to Hainan, so I came to check it out. But your poisonous snake, Shenjun, was injured and is alone like this." Duongson struggled to get up and coughed for a few breaths, asking, "Who are you? Why are you threatening that young junior brother of mine?" Wen Tang laughed heartily and replied, "You will understand when you see this face and my red hand. Your father made me like this. I, the Bloodmaster, am Wen Tang." He recalled Wen Tang's appearance from before and muttered, "Tack molecules. I heard he was poisoned at the head and fell down the cliff by the seaside. It seems he survived." Duongson saw Xiaolong struggling in Wen Tang's grasp and urgently shouted, "Junior brother, he has nothing to do with us. Let him go." Wen Tang replied, "If you say that, I will exchange my life for that kid." He grabbed Xiaolong by the neck, saying, "I don't like you. If you even touch me a little, you will die. You, the martial master with great skills, causing harm to the world." Duongson gritted his teeth in anger and muttered, "That ruthless demon head finally seems like you have no intention of letting the junior brother go." At that moment, Xiaolong was being strangled to the point he could barely endure. Van Tuong laughed heartily and said, he uttered each difficult sentence, "Please save me." Xiaolong's seemingly fading figure caused the eyes to brighten in the darkness. The young members of the Enro family inside him rushed out and clung to his arm. They bit into Van Tuong's body. He panicked, "What in Go Kong?" Van Tuong hurriedly released Xiaolong, saying, "Let me take you away. Ngo Kong is causing a commotion. Anyway, Ngo Kong seems to pose a danger to me," cursing. Those kids injected poison into him, causing him to have. Van Tuong fell down and shouted curses. After that, he lay motionless at the boy's feet. Xiaolong panicked and muttered, "Lord, he's dead." The boy stomped his foot on him and said, "Hey, are you still alive?" Duongson was astonished, his mouth. Then he laughed as if he had struck gold and muttered, "Isn't this a respected guest, young hero?" Xiaolong exchanged, hitting Van Tuong with a stick, saying he must become a member of the Duong family. At the Dao Quan, a few days after Thak Van Duong collapsed, a sigh echoed through the room. Hui Xiaolong was caring for Duongson, who was weak in bed. He expressed his gratitude, "Young hero, Xiaolong." Upon seeing him speak, he immediately said, "We can't delay any longer. If the senior can tell me your location, I will go and check." Before finishing, the boy hesitated, turned to scratch his chin thoughtfully. "Ah, I can't leave the senior here alone. That's not good. But I also can't call for help." Hearing this, Duongson hurriedly said, "I'm fine. Don't worry. Rest and heal for a few days, and I'll be all right." The boy was shocked and exclaimed internally, "This old man has lost so much blood, and yet he still speaks calmly." He remembered that at that moment, the old man had coughed up a pile of blood and then reassured him he was okay. But the boy immediately replied, "Please don't say that. Your condition." Duongson, catching his breath and weakly replied, "I'm okay now." He feared the boy would continue to worry about him, so he added, "I am a person of the martial world." Xiaolong was extremely surprised by this, questioning, "Martial world person?" He curiously asked, "Do you mean by martial world people who can jump, fly, and use martial arts techniques?" The old man smiled kindly and replied, "Not everyone can do that, but you could say it's accurate." He was amazed and thought, "Wonderful indeed, the world here has something different. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense if there were a centipede as big as a house." Duongson interrupted his thoughts, saying, "After all, you're a young hero and you saved my life. It is a great favor. Although it might be somewhat impolite, allow me to formally greet you." He introduced himself. "I am Duong Tuet Son from the Duong family's Four Crossings sect. The boy also introduced himself. I am Wei Xiao. He closed his eyes and praised Xiaolong. It means little dragon, a good name. He looked at the boy and asked, furthermore, I have many questions I want to ask. Is that okay? The boy politely replied, yes, please ask. He voiced his questions. Creatures that carry poison and have a dark hue beside you are Nengo Kong, right? The boy looked down at the larvae crawling on him, lightly hitting one, and then confirmed, yes, those are Ngokong, the larval stage of the Qingbang Gokong. Duongsan was so surprised that he sat up and exclaimed, you say you've tamed the larvae of the Qingbang Gokong? The boy was startled by the master's reaction and also shouted, Senior, please lie down. Before the old man cared about the boy's advice, he continued speaking. Where did you do that? How could you have tamed them? The boy hesitated and replied, while waiting for you, I saw that you were surprised and interrupted me. Are these poisonous insects also being raised by you? He hesitated and continued, ah, that is. He felt a bit embarrassed and spoke up. Perhaps the story is a bit long. Do you want to hear it? The old man covered his mouth and nodded. It's okay. Go ahead. And he began to tell the story. Well, I will start with the evidence of the Qingbang no Kong. The story is like this. On the night outside the Dao Quan, it was quiet and peaceful, as if listening to the story. After hearing the entire story, Duongsan was astonished and asked, so you mean you took the eggs and raised them yourself? The boy replied, yes, that's right. I estimate that the eggs will hatch. The old man, drenched in sweat, wonders who could possibly know when the eggs will hatch or what to do. Then you speak up. Please wait a moment, elder. Without answering, Xiaolong unlocks the cabinet compartment. You take out the creatures from the cabinet and propose. Do you want to see this, sir? You take one out and introduce, this is a common lizard from the cave. It has yellow stripes on its body and white stripes on its tail. You take out another one and describe, and here are the ones with large white stripes on their tails, selected for breeding. The results show these two distinctive colors. Duongsan is stunned, staring at the creatures in front of him, then exclaims, could it be? He yells, I heard you created these colors. Is that true? Are they really beautiful? He swallows hard. He questions, could it be that if you only breed the strongest venomous ones, you could create a species with even stronger poison? You softly make an uncertain sound, puzzled by his words. In your head, spinning with theoretical thoughts, it's possible. After thinking, you say, if we know which one's venom is stronger, then of course it's possible. You hesitate. That's difficult, he replies, not expecting your loud voice. What is it possible? Which startles you. He places his hand on your shoulder, seriously suggesting, please join our clan. You are surprised and respond with a sound. He shouts again, if you join our sect, all ultimate martial skills will be passed down without any hesitation. Rare medicinal herbs, spirit herbs, and any kind of poison desired will be within your reach. He passionately persuades, if it's you, perhaps you can catch or cultivate one of the 10 great luck spiders of the Central Plains, legendary in the martial world. If this still does, Duongsan uses his ultimate move, not to show off, but one of the 3 treasures of the Central Plains is my daughter, Xiaolong. You quickly stop him. You ask, what did you just say? Are you also surprised? And make a sound. Then, as if realizing the truth, he laughs loudly. You're young, but also a man. So, yes, my daughter is one of the 3 treasures of the Central Plains. You see, he misunderstood and shout, no, not setting such conditions. You imagine the 10 great luck spiders he mentioned, clenching your fists and asking loudly, the 10 great luck spiders of the Central Plains are as formidable as the Thanbango Gong? He asserts confidently, yes, of course. He smirks complacently. Thanbango Gong is also very formidable, but it's still a lower-level poison species, incomparable to the 10 great poisons he describes, from the house-sized centipede to the shiny golden larvae. You are amazed, constantly making associations based on his words, but he says, whatever you think, in reality it will be even more beyond that. Duongsan softly sighs. Indeed. He observes your bright, excited face and the 2 larvae crawling in your clothes, then concludes, it seems I've successfully persuaded you. 2 days later, at the Dao Temple, Duongsan's disciples, upon hearing the news, shout loudly, I heard that the Bloodmaster Lasat Thakvan Duongsan says, indeed, almost got into big trouble. I didn't expect him to hide and cultivate martial arts to reach a realm comparable to my father. His disciples fearfully stammer, One disciple hesitates and can't finish the sentence. So then, another disciple suddenly thinks of something and exclaims, could it be that the master has already killed him? Or perhaps you've reached the 10,000 poisons realm? Then a disciple says, "Congratulations." The others quickly say, "Oh, congratulations, master." He exhales and denies, "No, that's not it." He continues, "The one who killed him wasn't me, but this fellow knight-errant." The disciple is surprised and exclaims, "This fellow knight-errant?" After saying that, he turns to clasp your hand tightly, shouting, "Isn't that fellow knight-errant?" "Yes." The disciples quickly say, "Thank you, fellow knight-errant, for saving our master's life." Duong-san, our master, is usually strict and never ages. You are surprised by their words and ask again, "Huh? What do you mean never ages?" Duong-san calmly interrupts, "It seems there's some misunderstanding with the fellow knight-errant. Can you show me directly?" You think for a moment and agree, "Come out, kids." The disciples widen their eyes, looking at the thing trying to crawl out from your clothes. The small larvae, both crying and looking around the scene. The disciple sees the larvae clearly and is amazed, exclaiming, "Oh, aren't they no gongs?" No, they're the larvae of Than Ban Ngo Gong. These have defeated Lasat Thak Van Duong. One disciple, upon seeing this scene, suddenly yells with a hint of fear, "What poison do they have? Are they safe?" Another disciple also yells, unable to hide his admiration, "You have tamed Then Ban Ngo Gong. How can a young fellow knight-errant have such talent?" Duong-san calmly speaks, "Therefore, I have decided to accept the young fellow knight-errant into our clan." The fellow knight-errant says he wants to think it over, but the disciples excitedly exclaim, "Oh, fellow knight-errant, this is truly a great opportunity." Duong-san says, then his voice attracts the group of people who are constantly excited on the other side. He clenches his hands seriously and says, "Perhaps I should stand up now. It seems we shouldn't delay any longer." Xiaolong asks the elder, "Do you want to look for anything else?" He just ponders silently, not answering. "Hurry up." Then he seriously says, "The blood master La Sat Thak Von Duong." The martial arts he cultivated are blood master poison art. It's a terrifying demonic technique that uses blood and bone marrow to elevate. You panic, thinking this is some kind of crazy demonic technique. He resolutely decides, if he leaves behind any secret manuals or has any successors, we must handle it thoroughly. We cannot allow such cruel demonic techniques to appear again in the martial. He clenches his hands as the fellow knight-errant asks, "If someone is captured, shouldn't we help them?" The disciples agree. "Of course, master and fellow knight-errant." He turns to the fellow knight-errant, "Can you give me a hand? Anyway, you are familiar with the geography of the two islands." Xiaolong remains silent. As evening approaches, the dedicated larvae crawl closer to you and you close your eyes and ponder. Perhaps becoming someone of the Duong family means a lifelong job. Usually, when doing an internship, it's to observe the company's atmosphere and also to assess the boss's character, right? You happily agree, "I understand. Once you recover your health, I will support you fully." The disciples, upon hearing this, exclaim, "Oh!" Duong-san praises the fellow knight-errant. "That's right, you." He smiles brightly. Saving someone naturally means helping. On the surface, he is modest, but deep down, he secretly thinks, "On this trip, I must thoroughly investigate what Tusuyen Duong is really like." He adds with confidence, talented people usually interview in return. 3 days have passed since the patriarch Duong Jathiet-san restored his body. The group, including Duong-san, Wei Xiaolong, and the disciples, because they wanted to find the hideout of Bloodmaster, Lasat Thak Van Duong, stopped by a village. They inquired if anyone had gone missing. The villagers, when asked, showed some worry and said, "Are you referring to missing persons?" The old man recalled and said, "In the past year, 1 or 2 people have gone missing in the forest. However, there haven't been any regular disappearances." Duong-san strokes his beard thoughtfully. The group clasps their hands in gratitude towards Duong-san. On behalf, the village chief also clasps his hands, cheerfully replying, "It's nothing. Helping the well-known place of Tusuyen Duong family is truly an honor for us." He says thank you. The village chief tells them, "Wishing you a safe journey." Unfortunately, their group did not obtain any additional information, so they continued on their way. Xiaolong wondered why this village didn't seem any different, as Duong-san was deep in thought. He thought for a moment, then replied, "Looking at the situation, he discovered us and revealed himself. I thought he would definitely be around here, searching, but it's not easy." "You also think there is something strange. How come he didn't leave any trace like this?" Xiaolong just remembered when Thak Van Duong attacked them and wondered what he had said like this. Then, as if recalling something, he spoke up. "You speak up, senior. Do you remember what he said when he appeared?" Duong-san turned to reply, "I don't remember much. How about you?" He then recalled thinking to himself, Ah, he was hit by a move and then vanished. He continued speaking. Yes, so. He analyzed. He said that the Duong clan has entered Hainam Island, right? The elder questioned. Is that so? He continued. In other words, it means someone knew about the Duong clan entering Hainam Island and had reported it to Thakvan Duong, right? He replied, perhaps so. Xiaolong cheerfully presented his solution. That's simple then. We just need to verify the path the Duong clan took on Hainam Island based on their appearance. If we use facial descriptions to investigate, we will find them. He and his group of disciples looked at him in dismay. Amid the disciples' joy, Duongsan suddenly exclaimed, Ah, I hadn't thought of that. That's truly excellent. If the Bloodhand La Sat Thakvan Duong said that, he must have heard the news from someone who has seen us. While he felt a bit embarrassed by the praise, he decided, then it's easy. Let's move immediately, he said. They moved, but this place was enveloped in a heavy, gloomy atmosphere. The group gradually entered the village. One of the disciples spoke up. The village master heard at the port on Hainam Island, so it must be that village. Duongsan assessed. It seems that village is where the group of female residents. He ordered, let's come here and see. According to the knight's words, perhaps the women here won't be too hostile towards us. The disciples unanimously responded, yes, village master. In the village, the people were extremely downcast. Many people were distraught. Some even lay in front of their home. A villager quietly sat working, then spoke up. Is anyone here? This caught the attention of the villagers. When the villagers turned to look, they saw their group had entered the village. The villagers asked the Han people, what brings you to the village of the women? He was somewhat surprised upon seeing the village elder, accompanied by a little girl and two young men from the village. Duongsan and his group of disciples clasped their hands in greeting and said, I am the head of the Duong clan in Tushuyan. My name is Duong Triet's son. The reason we have... While everyone was talking, Xiaolong silently observed the surroundings. He silently assessed, this village is indeed lifeless. The children also look weak. He suddenly thought of something and silently thought, wait a minute. He questioned in his mind, what's the condition of these people? He looked over the villagers, all dejected, and pondered, could it be that they are all poisoned? The village elder said, regarding the disappearances, I don't know about that. Nothing has happened. He changed his expression and then spoke up, go back. Duongsan continued to try to negotiate, but it seemed that fewer people were in the house. The elder shouted, this matter is not something the Han people need to be concerned about. Both Duongsan and Xiaolong were extremely surprised by that attitude. Duongsan turned to speak softly to Xiaolong. Clearly, I heard that the people here are very friendly to the Han, but you don't understand anything. He replied, ah, so. The little girl the village elder was holding hands with. The elderly village chief panicked and shouted, Demon Chuan! Ah, you think she just fell down? The elderly man was so panicked that he burst into tears. Oh heavens, Demon Chuan, no, my only remaining relative is my child. The elderly man, in pain, said, how could even my child suffer from these dreadful illnesses? Duongsan knelt down before the elderly man and then suggested, please, village elder, I know a bit of medicine. Can I help? The elderly man asked again, is your medicine from Zhongyuan? He replied, yes, although I'm not a great healer, I have some understanding of medicine. Let me take a look at the child's condition. The elderly man hurriedly agreed. Relying on you is my only hope. The elderly man said, actually. The village elder began to recount. Some time ago, a strange epidemic began appearing in the village. The children died one after another, and the adults also fell ill with debilitating disease. Duongsan placed his hand on the elder's shoulder and consoled. I see. Let me take a look. The elderly man then exclaimed, thank you very much. The elderly man told them, please come inside quickly. Then he shouted to the villagers, what are you waiting for? Hurry and bring the great healer and his group inside. The group hurriedly ran inside. As Xiaolong ran, he asked a disciple, Senior, does he also know medicine? He answered, ah, yes, exactly. He explained, the martial arts of the Duong clan are related to handling poison effectively, so we are also very proficient in pharmacology. Moreover, our martial arts start with a clear understanding of the body. He was surprised and thought, I thought they were just a group of assassins specializing in poison. If joining the Duong clan in Tushuyan not only involves learning terrifying poison, the disciple, with a somewhat fierce expression, continued, ah, of course, sometimes we capture bad guys and inject poison into them to see their reactions. At this, he panicked and wondered. He associated Duong San and his disciples with being cruel and ruthless, and thought to himself, saying that it makes sense. They are very scary people. The sky remained overcast. The first rays of sunlight of the day shone into a house. Machuan was lying still, but his whole body was emanating green energy, and he was Duongsan briefly explained to the village elder, "First, I have infused internal energy into him to stop his breathing." The elder replied, "Oh, thank you, sir." The elderly man rubbed Machuan's head, then sorrowfully said, "This is my only remaining granddaughter. Please, sir, save her." Duongsan said, "By the way," he asked, "your pulse is irregular. That's really strange. Didn't the child's heart already be weak since birth?" The elderly man replied, "It's just that the illness started to worsen about half a year ago. Not only my granddaughter, but many others have also begun to suffer from debility." The old man explained that what we called a terrible disease earlier had instructed everyone to return immediately from the gate. For the same reason, Xiaolong understood and immediately exclaimed, "That's it." Duongsan responded, "Please, elder, first I will prescribe a good medicine for the heart. Could you gather everyone in the village to help me so we can try the medicine and see how it works?" The old man was moved to tears and cried out in gratitude towards you. Once again, the old man expressed his deep gratitude. Xiaolong quietly observed Duongsan smiling kindly. As night fell, the disciple gently called out to the master. The disciple said, "You have worked hard treating everyone's illnesses." Duongsan replied, "Thank you, Jubai." He inquired about the condition of the patients. After some thought, he spoke, "This matter is truly very strange." He analyzed the symptoms: fatigue, swelling around the eyes, unstable capillaries, and a mild fever. Although the symptoms varied, those with severe illness all had heart problems. He suddenly remembered and asked, "By the way, what about the junior fellow?" Jubai reported, "Junior fellow seems tired after helping everyone, so I have him resting in his room." He thought of his disciples carrying the junior fellow to rest. The disciple sighed. "The junior has done his best." He then said, "Since he hasn't trained his martial arts yet, following us must have made him easily fatigued." He continued, "By the way, we should also visit to see how the junior fellow is looking." Jubai responded, "Let me lead you to the master's residence." The room door gently opened. Inside, Xiaolong was sleeping soundly, unaware of anything. Duongsan did not step inside but quietly observed from outside. He suddenly pushed the door open. He quickly approached the bed where He reached out his hand toward him. His hand swiftly came down like lightning. He precisely slapped Xiaolong across the face, causing him pain and making him shout. Xiaolong woke up abruptly, confused about what had happened. Staring at him, he stammered, "Senior." While looking at him with extreme anger, he wondered internally why Duongsan had suddenly slapped him, leaving Xiaolong. He suddenly felt Duongsan punch him, making Xiaolong bewildered. He sat up, holding his cheek where he had been slapped. Xiaolong said, "This." He held his face, pressed against the wall, puzzled about what was happening. "Senior, oh my God, it hurts so much." Duongsan hurried over, reaching out his hand to apologize. "I only meant to swat the bug crawling." Xiaolong stared blankly and asked, "What bug?" Duongsan looked awkward. Xiaolong heard him say, "What do you mean?" He looked through the door gap and said, "I just came to visit the junior fellow for a bit, before resting." Suddenly, Duongsan saw a bug and said, "You know, suddenly a bug flew over and landed on your face, don't you?" He raised his hand, his eyes sharp, and said, "In the South Sea Islands, there are many types of toxic parasites I'm not familiar with, so it's quite dangerous. That's why I instinctively—" Duongsan held the smashed bug in his hand and said, "Look, this bug is so big." Xiaolong looked at the bug in his hand, stunned. Suddenly he exclaimed, "This?" Xiaolong muttered, "Wait, why is this bug here?" He seemed to have discovered something. Xiaolong asked, "Senior, although the patients have various symptoms, they all have abnormal facial features, right?" Duongsan replied, "Yes, that's correct." He added, "You said the cause of these terrible diseases is spreading throughout the village." Xiaolong pointed to the bug in his hand and said, "It's caused by this bug." Duongsan was surprised and exclaimed, "What?" He continued, "This is a type of bug from the Hemiptera family. It's named so because it usually sucks blood from the eyes or... This type is agile and extremely fast, even faster than mosquitoes, so it's also called a vampire or assassin bug." Xiaolong took a cloth to wipe the place where the bug had landed and said, "This bug itself isn't poisonous, but its stomach is full of parasitic organisms that are harmful." He continued, "Therefore, when it bites someone, they become infected through... The disease it causes is called trypanosoma, also known as Chagas disease. It's a dangerous illness ranked 7th on the list of most fatal diseases for humans." Xiaolong said, "Village chief, Aren't the dogs in the village panting or showing symptoms similar to humans? The village chief panicked and replied, Yes. Could it be because of this bug? He sighed. Yes, it must be. Duongsan was puzzled and asked, If so, can our sister be saved? Xiaolong answered, If there is medicine, she can still be saved, but Duongsan laughed heartily and asked, Jubai, do you see how I look at people? Jubai laughed and replied, Indeed, I have clearly seen the value of the junior fellow. Xiaolong stepped in, not understanding what was happening, muttering, Why are these people? He spoke up, Junior, please join our Duongjia Swan sect. Xiaolong was taken aback and replied, Yes. Duongsan confidently said, join our Duongjia Swan sect. He looked at Xiaolong and muttered, Why is that? He explained, There is something called cold parasites, which are referred to as vu-ko or cold poison. These parasites are cultivated by the villains in the central. Duongsan continued, Those evil people force others to ingest these parasites periodically to cause pain or to control people's actions according to their will. Xiaolong was astonished and replied, They can control people? That's horrifying. Duongsan said, Despite being very harmful, many martial artists have lost their lives because of these parasites. He continued, People might even kill their own families and then commit suicide or betray their clans to become slaves for the villains. The village chief, listening, wept bitterly, exclaiming, Oh heavens, what a Duongsan explained, For a long time, people in the martial world have been striving to create an antidote for this type of a kind of antidote that can expel the parasite from the body or make it dissolve. Xiaolong was amazed and exclaimed, Impossible. Duongsan suddenly pulled out something from his robe and shouted, It's done. If the martial world has created such an antidote, where have they? He proudly held up a round pill and said, Of course, it's our Duongjia Sichuan's pill. We have a medicine that can dissolve even large masses in the body with just a handful. As for those tiny microorganisms, they're no problem. Duongsan handed over the large, shiny pill and said, As long as you have a bit of this pill, it's enough to neutralize the parasite. Xiaolong gaped in awe, marveling at the pill. Duongsan said tearfully, So don't worry, elder. Duongsan added, Your granddaughter can be saved now. Duongsan assured, You can be assured, elder. The result is that, starting with the village chief's granddaughter, the villagers gradually recover their health. The village chief hugs his granddaughter joyfully and shouts, Oh my goodness, so lucky. The warm welcome from the villagers is an added reward. Seeing their bright faces, it seems the information about the female tribe member's optimistic nature. Duongsan pats his shoulder and says, If the young hero doesn't find the cause, it will be really difficult. Their benefactor must be me, not this young man. The young men in the village unanimously thank him. Thank you so much, young Long, they respond shyly. Everyone around shouts loudly, Young hero is the benefactor of our village. Although he was treated with Duong family's medicine, Lord Duongsan has credited all the credit to me. Seeing everyone's gratitude and his joyful expression, it's as if it were his own deed. A bit touching. The young men in the village surround him and lift him into the air to honor him. A while later, the village chief approaches Duongsan closely and asks, You mentioned someone at the village gate. What's that about? The old man says, People are looking for a missing person in the village. Duongsan replies, Yes, that's correct. But why do you ask? The village chief looks worried and says, I want to repay the favor, so I did some investigation and heard a strange story. Everyone falls silent to listen as the old man recounts, In our village, there was a girl who was married from another. A few years ago, a strange phenomenon occurred in her parents' village. People began to disappear one by one. After hearing this, Duongsan was extremely alarmed. He looked around and murmured, There are clues now. Duongsan asks, Where is that place? The village chief responds, It's to the west, in a small village. When people go there, they only see wilderness. Duongsan covers his face with his hand and says, The nearby servant's corpse looks like it's from that place, the patriarch's home. He seemed to see something horrific and shouted, What is that? The piled-up corpses, including skeletons, chilled him to the bone. Duongsan says coldly, There are even toxic corpses, self-poisoned toxins that arise after decomposition. He exclaims in horror, Don't let the young hero see this scene. Young Long says, I've already seen everything. Suddenly, Antok Tre discovers something and asks, What's over there? A thin snake with its head severed. A bird with strange feathers is swallowing the snake's head. And my Tre murmurs, A bird. He grabs a stone in his hand and says, No, that bird cannot let the deceased be further disgraced. And my Tre throws the stone forcefully at it and shit out of here. Duongsan shouts, "Wait a moment!" The stone flies past, startling the bird. It stomps its claws hard on the ground. Its eyes are full of murderous intent, in an attacking stance. Angry, he shouts loudly, "Damn it!" Duongsan pats his shoulder to calm him. "Stop, something is wrong." The bird spreads its large wings, flapping powerfully and flying into the sky with Young Long sees this and panics. The corpses touched by the black smoke are all melting. He murmurs, "No, they're melting." A hand covers his mouth. Duongsan shouts loudly, "Everyone, get out of the way." That's Tram Dio. Everyone sits down in a circle. Duongsan explains, when its wings spread wide, it can reach the 5 virtues. Its beak is bright bronze and sharp like a spear, and its body is covered by a dark purple dragon armor. The 2 attendants listen seriously as he continues. When enraged and spreading its wings, everything around it turns black and dies, transforming into toxin. Duongsan continues, wearing a golden helmet and exuding an imposing aura befitting a king. This type is called Tram or Tram Dio. Young Long exclaims, "Could it be?" He excitedly shouts, "Is it one of the 10 great venomous killers?" The old man nods. Young Long eyes light up with excitement. That's the leader of the 10 great venomous killers, known as the Emperor of all Tram Dio. He mutters, "Tram Dio is truly terrifying, overwhelmingly powerful and poisonous. Compared to the toxins on Earth, it only looks adorable." Young Long is not only happy, but also sees Tram Dio as a biological weapon flying everywhere. Duongsan says it seems to have been lured here by a group of snakes carrying automata. The other 3 murmur, "I heard Tram Dio only eats the heads of the most venomous snakes." The worried young man asks, "Is this an omen?" The old man replies confidently, "Absolutely. In my lifetime, it's rare to witness a Tram Dio. It's so rare that in 100 years, only one person has seen it once." Young Long stammers, "Duongsan, why is that, young hero? Don't tell me you intend to catch it and make people astonished." The old man laughs loudly. "Do you want to try catching it?" The young man replies, "Yes, but its toxicity is such that..." Duongsan just smiles at him. Then suddenly he says, "This kid seems very interested in the 10 great venomous killers. If that's the case, there is a way." Young Long is surprised and asks, "Is there really a..." Duongsan says, "If you train in the Duong family's poison techniques, your body will become highly resistant to toxins, capable of countering even Tram Dio's poison." He adds, "In this world, only our family's martial arts can prevent that kind of poison." Duongsan points to his face and says, "But what can we do? Because our family does not teach the clan's secrets to outsiders." He continues, "Even if I want to help you as much as possible, as the head of the family, I cannot break the clan's rules." Young Long shouts excitedly, If I become a member of the Duong family, can I learn it? And if I reach the stage of being toxin resistant, can I really counter Tram Dio's poison?" Duongsan confidently replies, "Of course, if you decide firmly now, I will wholeheartedly teach you. Naturally, the formal initiation will also be well prepared." Looking at the faces of the others, none believe his words except Young Long. The old man laughs slyly and says, "But if you hesitate too long, you have to think it through, right?" His heart surges with passion, his face flushed red. Young Long resolutely says, "I agree to become a member of the Duong family and look forward to your guidance, esteemed elder." Duongsan laughs loudly. "Very well, that's excellent." He patted his shoulder and said, "From now on, you are forever a member of the Duong, the residents of the bloodline of La Sat Thak Van Du, the trace of footsteps next to poison." Suddenly, someone called the master of the house. Brother-in-law Cham handed over the book and said it is located inside the cave. Duongsan took it in his hand, opened each page, and said, "These writings in blood are indeed the secret manual of the Blood Assassin clan." Then Xiaolong was astonished and he put away the manual and said, "Let's return." "You wondered if he plans to go to Tu Xuyen?" Duongsan replied, "Yes, that's right. We've obtained the internal elixir of Then Ngo Gong and the secret manual." Xiaolong, remembering the animals he raised, asked, "So can we drop by the Taoist temple for a bit? I want to release some of my friends." He replied, "Yes, we can. I will also prepare your gear." Duongsan turned and said, "Then let's set off." Xiaolong kept looking back. Suddenly he discovered something. Xiaolong pointed to the cave and said, "There is something over there." Brother-in-law Cham wondered, "What do you mean?" Everyone huddled together and looked down. The short-haired man asked, "What is this?" Everyone shouted, "These are the feathers of our master, Tram Dio." Everyone looked towards the feather that was emitting a purple light. Duongsan put on gloves and picked up the feather to examine it. He opened the case and said, "This is a congratulatory gift for you becoming a member of the Duong family. It seemed very intriguing, and Xiaolong excitedly said, "Thank you, sir, senior. Thank you, master." Duong San turned back, smiling, and said, "Everything is fine, except I don't like this way of addressing each other." He said, "Perhaps after the oath ceremony, we can change the way we address each other to be more appropriate." You were surprised and muttered, "The ceremony is like an." At the same time, at the Duong family's Tushian front, the army was injured. A family supporter said, "Respected master, our master Duongbo has calculated that the person who set out first has finally arrived." The old man called loudly, "Quickly, hurry up to Yinyi. How is the situation?" The subordinate supporting the Duong army whispered, "She is still alive." The old man said, "Hurry, quickly go to Yinyi." The door to the room opened. Duong Quan appeared, shouting loudly, "Yinyi!" Those beside the bed loudly called, "Respected master." Duong's wife, looking worried, called out to her father-in-law. He replied, "Sister-in-law, I have brought medicine here." Duong Quan took out a pill and said, "This is the internal pill of Thenban Ngo Gong." She covered her mouth with her hand to suppress her emotions and said, "Master." Everyone sat down and waited for the old man to give the medicine to Yin. Her face looked very pale, and she was still breathing heavily. Duong Quan looked pityingly and called. The old man took the pill and said, "It was almost fatal, but I hurried and made it in time." Duong's wife said, "Father-in-law, quickly give the medicine." The old man slowly handed the pill to Yin. A stream of green energy emanated from the woman. Duong Quan took her hand to take her pulse. Then the old man used internal energy. She looked at her beloved daughter and worriedly, "Quickly wake up, Yin Ni." Xiaolong, with a blank face, sitting behind, said, "I heard that Zhongyuan is vast, but not that immense like this." From Hainan, traveling by boat to Hongqiao, after crossing Nanning, ending a long journey of a month and a half. Finally, we have arrived at Tushin, under the protection of the Duong family. Brother-in-law Cham smiled and said, "This is the Duong family's Tushuyan." The young knight was astonished and said, "Really? In front of us is the vast Duong family." He said, "This entire mountain belongs to the Duong family's Tusuyen. Therefore, this mountain is called Duongjia Mountain." Xiaolong couldn't believe his eyes. Everyone in the Duong family rushed out, loudly calling, "Master has returned and welcome you back." This made you panic and mutter, "Are all these people members of the Duong family's Tushuyan? Oh my, terrible." Behind this crowd of men, a girl in red attire also ran over. Her footsteps ran over to welcome the return. Duong-san was astonished when hearing two calls of father. The beloved daughter had awakened, cried bitterly, and ran over. Xiaolong, upon meeting, was enchanted by Yinyi's beauty. Duong-san happily called out loudly, "Yinyi, child, are you feeling better?" She hugged him tightly and said, "Father, I apologize." Yinyi exhaled and said, "I'm okay, right?" You looked at her and muttered, "Oh my God, is this appearance real? In my past life, I also collaborated with celestial beings, but like this?" Xiaolong looked at her beautiful face and said, "Honestly, this is the first time I've seen someone radiate such a halo." He turned and said, "I have someone who wants to be introduced to you." Duong-san said, "Xiaolong, this is my daughter, Duong Yin-ni." Xiaolong's face went blank. He continued, "Ah, do you remember what you said? The scent of grass, the aroma of grass." Yin-ni, hearing these words, was full of confusion. "Grass?" Duong-san patted her head and said, "It's just weed," making Yin-ni startle and blush. Both looked at each other in silence. "You remember earlier when the old man said, 'My daughter is a treasure of Zhongyuan'?" Xiaolong rebutted, "No, it's not those weeds. Aren't you a bit ashamed? Duong Yinyi, the only daughter of the Duong family, has borne the burden of sorrow since she was young, hard for anyone to understand." The two elders were talking to each other. One said that the talent's capabilities are still not very clear. The other said that her appearance isn't particularly outstanding, yet she is hailed. She hid in a secluded place, listening to the comments. The shrewd daughter-in-law said that as long as there is a son-in-law in name to make it reasonable, that's enough. The other said that they had suggested taking in an additional maid, but she didn't. Ngani endured the unpleasant words, muttering to herself, "It's not like that. My mother and father are not at fault. I want to prove my own strength to the clan's elders." By practicing and perfecting her martial arts, even though she is not male, she can still accomplish many things for the clan. There is a saying, haste makes waste. Impatience only leads to getting lost. That impatience created a dark mind. The dark mind turned into an obstacle, becoming a demon. After she regained consciousness, thanks to medicine and the help of everyone sat around worried. The martial lady happily said, "You have survived." Genyi replied, "Mother, what should I do now?" Tears kept streaming down her face. Nganyi cried bitterly, "I'm sorry, mother." She thought to herself, That's over. I always wanted to become someone useful for the clan. Nganyi looked at the martial path member and said, I have lost all my inner power. The old man took her hand and said, Young miss, the martial path member laughed and said, Are you remorseful for having troubled your parents and our family? You have achieved the mastery of the 8 poisons that you always desired. Stop crying and cheer up. She was stunned and asked, The 8 poisons? Nganyi raised her hand and saw a faint blue light emanating from it. The aura emanating was so strong that she was astonished. Nganyi turned to ask the old man, Sir, you mentioned earlier that you have something to tell me. The martial path member cheerfully said, Not only did we save your life, but we also helped you attain the celestial poison inner power, surpassing even the white poison. Nganyi was puzzled. A wild grass? Everyone laughed and teased, while Xiaolong was embarrassed. He muttered, Xiaolong, obsessed with the 10 great poisons, yet dares to look at the young lady of a great clan as mere wild grass. Duongsan stood behind, smiling knowingly, watching him awkwardly. Xiaolong thought, I must reflect on my past actions. He forced a smile and said, The master really knows how to joke. It's a pleasure to meet you, young miss. I am Wei Xiaolong. Xiaolong said, I heard you were ill. It's really fortunate to see you healthy like this. Ngani hesitantly replied, Yes, that's right. Then she cheerfully said, It's a pleasure to meet you. Nganyi introduced, I am Dakhua Duong. Nganyi thanked, Thank you for saving the life of young hero Dakhua. I will never forget this kindness. Nganyi's introduction made Xiaolong enamored, muttering, So beautiful. The old man spoke up. How does that feel? He was startled and muttered, What? He has a voice here. This is telepathy. The martial path member continued telepathically. Even if it's a wild grass, do you want to try picking the wild flower? Xiaolong heard and blushed. The scene shifts to the bathroom, where he was soaking in hot water, relaxing. The young hooligans slept soundly in the basin. Xiaolong, enjoying himself, said, Damn it. He turned to look. He saw a young hooligan awake and muttered, It's normal for you to cling to me all day. Hot water is not good for the body. Do you want to get into the tub for a moment? As soon as he finished speaking, the child crawled into the tub. Looking at these adorable children, Xiaolong said, Truly strange. It seems they understand part of the words. According to Duongsan, it seemed they reacted to the murderous aura. He saw the beloved children smiling and saying, Staring at a naked body will make people embarrassed. Suddenly, they panicked and crawled into the tub to hide. He kept laughing and muttering, These kids are truly. Xiaolong turned around and said, Old Kubai Tung Tung, please tell us what these young hooligans are after seeing what the guardian spirit is. He suddenly realized something, recalling the demeanor when saying, The wild flower is truly beautiful. Do you want to try picking Duongsan's 1 by 0? He muttered the old man Duongsan's words swirling in his head, making him unable to stay calm. I must leave here quick. The scene is at the Duong family home. Everyone is sitting in the room, seemingly discussing something. Duongsan lifts a cup of tea and says, So, we will arrange everything properly in the room. This is a Tri-In Chinese cultural and architectural room, a type of room located on the east side of the main house in the 4-compound architecture, a common house style. If someone is in this room, Duong Kuan-Yi wonders, How is it that the young hero has such talent? He replies, Yes, we thought we had encountered a lucky opportunity, but that opportunity was not due to the help of the young hero. The young hero himself, Duongsan continues, This person's knowledge about poisonous creatures is extraordinary. Not to mention he can write long poems and even encountered legendary spirits like Tram Diu. In front of the astonishment of Duong Funyan and Ganyi, he says, I've heard that the young hero even personally incubated the... Duong Quan laughs and says, I really didn't expect you to overlook such a treasure. Duongsan replies, That's right, father. He calls out to Nanyi, and she immediately startles, not understanding. Duongsan asks, If you want to accept the young hero as a son-in-law, what do you think? Ganyi is puzzled. Do you mean you want the teacher, the young hero? She says, If it's to be a son-in-law, then. Nganyi lets out a sigh, causing Duong Funyan to look worried. Then she bows her head and Nganyi mumbles, Now I have surpassed white poison and entered the realm of heavenly poison. I want to prove that I can help the clan even more. She speaks up, I am also a member of the Duong family. She understands her father's intention. Nganyi slams her hand down on the table, speaking loudly, but she, with tears streaming down her back, says, Whether that young hero is truly worthy of me or not, I must verify it myself. After speaking, Nanyi immediately runs out. Everyone inside sits and looks on with some worry. Duong-san anticipates misfortune and mutters, Be careful, young hero. Looking after the figure of his daughter, he says, no matter how beautiful the red hibiscus is, it always carries sharp thorns. Ngan, while running, mumbles, now I have been able to aim for the heavenly poison body. If I stop here, I won't be able to be recognized by the elders of the clan. I will have to carefully and gradually examine his qualities and character clearly. After bathing, Xiaolong sits outside to catch the breeze. He wonders to himself, what's going on? Xiaolong, with a frowning face, says, it seems I have made a bad impression on the young lady of the great clan. The younger servants don't understand what. Xiaolong rubs his forelock and asks, Father, what are you going to do now? Suddenly, from behind, Nanyi appears calling out to the young hero, causing him to startle and yell. Because she had just run over, she is breathing heavily. Xiaolong is puzzled. Huh? She says, excuse me a moment, young hero. I am in a bit of a hurry. Looking at her bewildered expression, Nanyi asks, can you lend me a hand for a moment? Xiaolong extends his hand and says, yes, young lady. Suddenly he thinks of something. His face reddens and he says, about that. Xiaolong seems confused, saying, I don't know what you, young lady, are doing, but perhaps such matters are better handled when we are closer, aren't they? He is awkward, because it requires certain rituals. But she wonders, what do you mean by young hero? Nganyi then thinks of something, her face turning red. Her face turns as red as a ripe tomato. She shouts, no, it's not like that. What are you talking about? His face shows helplessness as he mumbles, no, it's not. It's a romantic sunset afternoon, but these two people are not. Nganyi says? She says, it's not what you think. I just wanted to check your pulse. Perhaps because I suddenly asked you to extend your hand, you misunderstood. Xiaolong, disappointed, forces a smile and says, I see. It's because I didn't know. Nganyi sits down and says, first of all, I want to apologize, Father. I appeared abruptly and acted rudely. She turns to him and says, Father still looks very young, not yet a young man, but you seem to be someone who thinks things through. So I will explain what is happening. Xiaolong stammers, okay. After sitting for a while listening to Nganyi's what he heard afterward was just like the plot of a typical period drama. As the sole direct descendant, she has to constantly endure the scheming plots from other four-aligned clans. To ensure the continuation of the family, the clan leader has decided to recruit a talented son-in-law. Xiaolong strokes his chin and mumbles, they even considered how my position in the clan would change if I went there. Nganyi says, because of that, I want to apologize first, but I need to confirm this matter with you, Father. She scratches her head and says, even if things don't go as desired, I have no intention of mistreating you, Father. You are my benefactor, so of course we will treat you as a distinguished guest. Nganyi has a different idea and says, no, what if you are sworn brothers? She is surprised when Xiaolong extends his hand towards her. He smiles and says, I understand what you mean. If you want to confirm something, feel free to do so. Nganyi remains silent, looking at it. Then she takes Xiaolong's pulse and says, all right, then let's begin. Around her, she creates a flow of energy that amazes him. Nganyi says, the martial arts of the Duong family are not something everyone can comprehend. Some people can absorb poisonous medicines into their bodies and master the Duong family's special techniques, while others cannot do it at all. Nganyi continues, based on the highest tower, 10,000 poisons, heavenly poisons, 100 poisons, 10 poisons, and 5 poisons. Therefore, the Duong family's poison techniques require a person to gradually adapt to various poisonous medicines as their internal strength increases. She says, after having taken Xiaolong pulse, Nganyi says, fortunately, your body can learn the poison techniques, but she turns to say, it's only the 10 poison body, which means that your body can only withstand 10 types of poisonous medicines. For someone not from the Duong family, having a 10 poison body is already very formidable, but Xiaolong is stunned when he hears her say that. Nganyi stands up and says, actually, if we consider overall strength, we can only consider you as a top martial artist. That is the highest level that someone without any innate talent can achieve. She turns around and bows, saying, it's truly a pity, so I'll be going now. He stands up and replies, take care. Xiaolong, with a sorrowful face, sees her off, and Nganyi is not cheerful. He mumbles to himself, do I have a 10 poison body? Like a lightning bolt striking his ears, Xiaolong exclaims, so I can't capture Tram Dio. For the clan, this is a very serious issue. His slender legs step out of the bathtub. Ngani takes a cloth to cover herself, sighs, and looks at her body, saying, "Since I absorbed the internal elixir of Thanban Gong, my body has been emitting this strange fragrance continuously, even bathing several times a day." Then Ngani puts on her clothes and says, "Is it because I spoke ungratefully to my benefactor that I was punished?" The scene shifts to Xiaolong bedroom, where he is now sound asleep. He is asleep, seemingly dreaming of something. Suddenly, Xiaolong appears somewhere with many cherry blossom trees. Suddenly, he hears someone crying, "I am very grateful for your boundless kindness." Miss Nanyi thanks my savior, my benefactor, and you mumble, "I'm dreaming, isn't it?" Some girl says no, maybe you'll feel like this is a dream, but it's not. Then Bengo Kong kneels on the ground and says, "I only borrowed the appearance of this female ghost. She is also the one who swallowed my internal core to prevent frightening you. I am the mother figure of those children, Than Bengo Kong." Xiaolong is puzzled. "Than Bengo Kong, why are there these cute kids at your feet?" In his human form, Xiaolong panics and says, "These kids scare me. When did they come here?" Xiaolong looks at the kids and mumbles, "Are these children hers? Are they all girls?" You kneel on one knee and ask, "But how did they appear in my dream?" She hesitates. Then Bango Kong still says, "I was brutally killed, leaving my clones. My vendetta has reached the heavens, and my soul has retained the internal core." She angrily says, "While I cursed, when I had to stay inside the female ghost's body, she absorbed my internal core. The opportunity for me to resolve this vendetta has come to help me appear in your dream." Then Bengo Kong gratefully says, "It's all thanks to you for following my clones, my benefactor." After hearing her clarify, Xiaolong replies, "I understand. After all, I was the one who revealed her location to others." Looking worried, Xiaolong says, "I didn't mean to, but anyway, I'm involved in Than Ban Ngokong's death." Looking at her face, there is a hint of pity. Then Ban Ngokong says, "Dear benefactor, if you don't mind, could you fulfill a wish of mine?" Xiaolong, holding a sleeping child, resolutely says, "Of course, I will fulfill any wish you have." She strokes her child's head and says, "Can you take care of my clones until they grow up?" You wonder, aren't the serpents already able to live independently after shedding twice from the mother's body? Then Ban Ngokong says, "For lower creatures, perhaps, but we are different." She pats the children, saying, "Before our clan's clones shed twice, they were heavily dependent on the chi from each mother's core. Then they continue to develop by absorbing vital chi from other living beings." Xiaolong asks, "Wait, Miss Nganyi has already absorbed the internal core, so do they have to stay close to her?" She seriously says, "You need to understand our situation, dear benefactor." Then Ban Ngokong asks, "Earlier I said I cursed this female ghost, right? Are you sweating profusely?" Xiaolong responds, "Yes, that's right." She says, "Because of my internal core, the female ghost's body is emitting a foul odor." Xiaolong is shocked and exclaims, "A foul odor?" with an evil expression. Then Ban Ngokong says, "I won't let any man get close to this female ghost and prevent her from having children." You panic and mumble, "Heavens." She says, "If you want to lift this curse, let my clones absorb the internal vital chi, and you can also seize this opportunity to win her heart." Xiaolong rests his chin, thinks for a moment, then smiles. You reply, "I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want to take advantage of Miss Nganyi's difficult situation." Then Ban Ngokong admires, "You truly are a respectable person, dear benefactor." She asks, "But then how do you intend to overcome this challenge? It seems the female ghost is looking for a strong and powerful man." Then Ban Ngokong says, "As for me, I can't take the internal core of the 10 great poisons for you. My internal core has been absorbed into that female ghost's body." Xiaolong mumbles, "Ah, the 10 great poisons." You cheerfully say, "I have an idea. Can you trust me?" She wonders what you mean. Xiaolong strokes the yellow child's head and says, "Just leave this matter to me. I think it's doable." The next day, after hearing Xiaolong recounting, Nong'anyi says, "So the odor emanating from my body is because of Thanban Ngokong's internal core. You bring her clones along." She responds, "Yes, and if in a few days she lets these serpents stay near her and absorb the internal chi, the foul odor will automatically disappear." She blushes and says, "I feel a bit embarrassed to ask this, but..." Nganyi asks, "Brother, tell me about this matter without asking for anything in return. Is that okay? Can't brother ask me for something in exchange?" Xiaolong smiles and says, "Ah, I can't mercilessly take advantage of every lady's difficult situation. He doesn't want to become someone who is shameless. She is surprised by the answer. Nganyi bows her head and stays silent for a moment. She says, "All right, in that case, I can't keep accepting your kindness without reciprocating." Nganyi seriously says, "I will seriously consider my father's words." Xiaolong, seeing you like this makes me realize there are things more important than talent or martial arts. Xiaolong, embarrassed, scratches his head and says, "I just said that, but actually I was also thinking about this a bit." She wonders, "What are you thinking about?" He laughs awkwardly and says, "I have 10 poison bodies and can absorb 10 types of poisons, right?" Nganyi sighs, "Yes, that's right." Xiaolong looks at the children and says, "So I have an idea. If I can only accept 10 types of poisons." He innocently asks, "Then can I absorb the 10 types of poisons from the 10 great poisons in the Central Plains?" Nganyi shouts, "Using the 10 poisons of the 10 great poisons." She blushes and mumbles, "So brother wants to become the strongest person in the world? Really? I can't believe it." For Duong Nganyi, one of the flowers of the forest martial arts, this is the first time a man has confessed so drastically to her. The sky seems gloomy, but rays of sunlight still pierce through the thick clouds, shining down on the cool roof outside. There are two people sitting on the steps discussing something. Hoen looks confused. She looks at Xiaolong and asks, "Do you know what you're talking about?" He faces Hoen's gaze, remains silent for a while, then scratches his head and laughs loudly, innocently, saying, "I don't know." She also falls silent with this guy. She turns around, sits straight up, places both hands on her chest, and confides, "That path will indeed be very arduous and difficult. It may take 15, 25, or even a lifetime to pursue." Xiaolong sits next to her, appearing dumbfounded, hesitantly wondering internally, "Is it that serious?" Suddenly thinks of something, his whole face flushed, wanting to smoke. He raises both hands to cover his face, softly mumbles, hesitantly opens his hands to wipe his cheeks to reduce the heat, regains composure, and implies, "All right, miss, please try to stay and then leave." The words make her turn to stone on the spot. It even starts cracking into pieces. Hoa and screams in helplessness at his. Her head feels like it's about to smoke, completely red from embarrassment. Xiaolong thought she was afraid of the small insects on him and hurriedly reassures, "Don't worry, my family's kids absolutely won't bite anyone." He remains dazed, sitting there listening to Hoa and talk about the future in the hesitant voice of a young maiden. In those 3 years, if brother succeeds in mastering one of the Therefore, if brother succeeds, the chance of achieving the goal is very high. He knocks his 2 index fingers together. She blushes, confused, and talks about the wedding. Suddenly Hoen stands up abruptly and shouts loudly, "Anyway, we will wholeheartedly support brother." This makes Xiaolong sitting beside her panic and huddle to one side. After saying that, she doesn't look back and runs away, only leaving the words, "All right, I'm leaving now." You are still stunned, exclaiming, "Huh?" Then hurriedly shouting to the busy back. Hoa and the young lady still leans forward. She turns her head back startled, asking, "So brother still has something left unsaid?" On the other side, Xiaolong smiles innocently, pats the spot beside him. His whole being seems to radiate the aura of the 10 Directions Buddhas, saying, "It's just about needing treatment." Even if she lingers a bit, the young lady should try to stay before leaving. Her words turn her to stone. After speaking, you turn to look at the little ones deep in your hands and call out, "Come on, my dear children." They also respond cheerfully to Xiaolong. You translate their words, causing the woman beside you to startle and exclaim, "Didn't you hear your father's instructions?" There is more joy and happiness as he repeats some important keywords. "Father? Mother? What are you listening to like that?" Xiaolong panicked. His overly stubborn denial echoed faintly, "No, it's not like that. I don't mean that." In the study, the 3 parents sit facing each other, their demeanor becoming serious as they discuss. It seems that the young hero's talents have not yet been able to move the heart of our daughter. Lord Quan sternly asks Lady Duong if she noticed this morning that there seemed to be something ominous between the two of them. She, holding a cup of tea, replies, "It seems that the young hero has been rejected by Miss Hoa'an, father." Upon hearing this, the old man falls into contemplation, stroking his silver beard, and gently says, "All right then." Over there, Lord Sun sinks into silence for a while. Lord Quan takes a deep breath and regains his voice. Forcing an arranged marriage is unreasonable. It is better for the feelings between the two to naturally develop. Lady Duong, upon hearing this, suddenly has an idea. She turns to her husband and suggests, why not assign the task of teaching martial arts to the young hero to Miss Hoa An? If they meet frequently, perhaps feelings will develop between them. Her eyes light up, saying, the head of the Duong family nods in agreement. Then I will ask Yi Tian to investigate whether we can grant Hui Tu and Tai Mao Tiandeng any favors. If possible, we can reduce the distance between them. Over there, Lord Sun is somewhat panicked and reminds, but Miss Hoa-en doesn't really have any interest, Father. I'm afraid we shouldn't have too high expectations. He crosses his arms again, becomes silent, closes his eyes, and nonchalantly says, just give it a try. He reluctantly agrees. All right, that's it. Outside the door, a familiar figure appears. Respectfully, Father, young Lady Hoa-en requests an audience, she calls out from outside, startling the three people in the room who mutter, why is Hoa-en coming here at this hour? Lord Sun regains his composure and speaks up, come in. After a moment's hesitation, she pushes the door and steps inside. Then, looking at the three serious parents sitting there, she becomes flustered, choking on her own saliva, and quickly leans forward, stammering, everyone was actually all here together. The three others stare at her, not understanding her meaning. So Hoa-en stands properly, clasps her hands respectfully, and says, I have come here because I have something to discuss. Something to discuss? Lord Sun is startled and asks again. Thinking about what she is about to say, she becomes a bit embarrassed, her face flushing red, her throat stiff, and Xiu will do as Father has instructed. She firmly holds her hands together for courage and says in a burst. He lets out a sigh, his whole face becoming stiff and expressionless. Later, Lord Sun hesitantly asks again, what did I say? What do you mean, my child? Lady Duong happily pulls her daughter closer to listen, while Hoa-en continues to stammer. It's that. The conversation ends with, it's because you are too anxious, she adds. Could it be that the young hero Xiaolong has caught your daughter's eye? She stiffens, becoming silent, her face changing colors like a chameleon. Just as she calms down a bit, signs of redness appear. Amidst the joy of the two parents, she asks, why is Omi suddenly acting like this? Earlier, you said you didn't approve, right? Her father is too straightforward, making Hoa-en not know what to say at this moment. She taps her two index fingers together, showing her fluctuating emotions. After a while, she dares to open her mouth. Because the young hero has promised to become the #1 under heaven. You have made such an oath. Her words excite the two parents to the utmost, and they ask again, #1 under heaven? He strokes his short beard, intrigued, and says, could you elaborate a little more on that? Well, following Father's wishes, Hoa-en honestly recounts her thoughts, even though Tianfu was born with only 10 venomous specimens. Because of me, the young hero has vowed to subdue all 10 types of poisons to become the top 10 venomous beasts. The head of the Duong family laughs heartily. Your words are a bit hard to hear, but it's more about pride. Those top 10 venomous beasts named Tiu Tu are indeed reckless and ignorant. Even your mother says, teasingly, oh heavens, are there such people in this world? It makes my head hot and red like a boiled shrimp. A moment later, she recovers and explains, although I have agreed in my heart, before the young hero Xiaolong matures, if he can subdue one of the 10 venomous beasts, then the marriage will be approved. Does everyone understand what I mean? Hoa-en glances at the other three, probing for understanding. The parents cheerfully agree. It's just a few sons, why can't they do it? If it's my daughter, she must go to that extent. Lady Duong adds, but the men are not very perceptive, are they? Hearing her mother speak, she understands a bit and asks, do I need to clarify it once more? The woman pats her daughter's head gently and says, no, that's not it. Doesn't the young hero realize that the matter has already been approved? Or perhaps he just isn't trying a bit harder for you? The ruling lord also cheerfully says, first of all, treat him like a son-in-law. It seems we have to act as if we don't know about this matter. If you try that, soon he will become part of our family line. Only then will they seem satisfied. Elsewhere, a pair of hands tightly grip Xiaolong hands, excitedly shouting, that's truly admirable, and Kong. Didn't you completely win her heart? He praises her, causing Xiaolong to become embarrassed, scratching his head and forcing a smile. That's courage and determination, she replies. The face looks just like Hoa-en's smiling face, except on its head there is a green diamond-shaped gem. After a moment of silence, it says, "And Kong, perhaps today will be the last time. The resentment has been resolved, so my spirit will soon be liberated." Holding on to the three children who are jumping around Xiaolong, they reply, "Yes, we understand." Standing still, letting a strand of hair fly in the wind, it asks, "How can I help you? If possible, we will do anything for you." He raises his hand to his mouth, looking thoughtful. If you don't mind, could you let me take a look at your body?" He snaps his fingers and earnestly asks Xiaolong. She blushes, tightly holds her collar, thinking, as expected, and Kong is also a true gentleman. Despite her hesitancy, after a moment, she agrees. "All right, that's fine." Afterwards, without hesitation, she pulls her collar down, but with a thoughtful heart. It seems that Kong is someone who is seeing this action. He suddenly becomes embarrassed and tries to stop in panic. "Wait, do I really need to remove it like this?" At this moment, it's its turn, feeling confused and bewildered, thinking, could it be? The children automatically cover their eyes upon hearing the two speak. "I won't remove it anymore if it makes you feel more comfortable." Xiaolong shouts in denial, "No, it's not what I mean. It's not like that. I just want to see the shape of the jade bracelet and Kong," she adds. "No need for further misunderstanding." He immediately responds honestly, amidst its. At this moment, it finally understands what Xiaolong means and hesitantly says, "If that's the case." A second later, the market scene changes, and his excited shouts echo everywhere. His whole body transforms spectacularly. From a beautiful young woman, she transforms into a gigantic son-in-law, still using a coquettish tone to say, "If it's like this, is it okay, and Kong?" Exhaling a weary sigh, Xiaolong's eyes shine brightly with excitement as he exclaims, "Oh, it's real! It's really huge!" "Could you let me touch it a bit?" he asks verbally, but his hands have already touched it continuously. And Kong is speechless, saying, "You have already touched it, nothing else." Once touched, Xiaolong becomes even greedier, begging, "Please let me keep a bit of it, but it's so big. How can the connection hold up?" Indeed, when you step forward, the front part lights up brightly, right? Upon hearing this, he waves his short front leg awkwardly and says, "Ah, yeah." He wonders, looking at this cute gesture. "You are excited? Can I touch your leg?" With this question, and Kong is speechless for the second time. "You have already touched it, haven't you?" Being a true expert, Xiaolong becomes more and more agitated, asking probing and unique questions. "How intense is it? And the eyes, do you see with eyes or still use your beard to feel?" The three children are still covering their eyes, but not because of embarrassment, unable to see this scene. It can only answer curtly, "Of course," then exclaims in a panic. Looking intently at the sharp claw, he tightly grips his hand and asks, "Then let me touch the venomous fang just once." This question stuns Kong. That might be a bit dangerous, it reminds him. Hearing that, Xiaolong immediately uses a cute tone to persuade. "I said I would meet any request, right?" And Kong shakes his head awkwardly. "And Kong, what are you talking about?" Meanwhile, Thenban and Kong thinks to himself, "Are my daughters really okay?" His hand touches her face, revealing a clear look of lust. "Ah, this lustrous gem is dazzling," he thinks the rest of the sentence, "because everything is truly abnormal." Lord Triot's son clasps his hands across his chin, his expression becoming more gentle as he says, "That's right, young hero. No, Xiaolong. I have already heard Hoangani tell the story, and from now on, you are my child," he says in his warm and strong voice. Xiaolong looks astonished, turns to look at the young lady beside him, who also listens to her father, smiling gently with her petite face. Xiaolong knows that she won't help him, so he is embarrassed and wants to explain. Yes, but there are still 3 years of challenges left. However, before he can finish his sentence, he is interrupted by the Lord, who does not give him a chance to refuse. "The wedding will be held when you become an adult, which is only natural." Hearing this, he helplessly waits. The wife sits beside him, one arm around his face. Although she is aged, her skin is meticulously cared for. She smiles brightly and quickly interjects, "Oh my son-in-law, how noble!" Once again, she welcomes him, saying, "We are your mother-in-law." Even the family patriarch participates enthusiastically. His hair has turned completely white, but his eyes light up when he looks at the young man, and his aged face smiles happily. Now, Huanyan has already chosen a suitable match. From now on, our family will only encounter. Seeing that everyone in her household is extremely supportive of their marriage, Xiaolong doesn't know what to say. He glances at Hoa En and softly calls out, "Ngan ni." She doesn't respond, but a small smile appears on her face. He thought he might have misread her expression until he looked closely. Her demeanor has returned to being aloof and cold, which amazes him. What's going on? Clearly, Tai Tai had set conditions for the marriage, so why is she acting as if she has already accepted it? Unsure of the current situation, he quietly decides to follow her lead first. Just as he thinks about it, Xiaolong regains his composure, scratches his head, and awkwardly smiles. Yes, I hope everyone can help. He had thought that after this statement, the atmosphere would become more awkward, or at least he would be the only one feeling embarrassed. However, the family patriarch and his son show no concern for him. The two elderly men in the house laugh heartily and discuss among themselves, saying, "Well then, we should get started." This scene leaves Xiaolong with a big question mark in his mind. After a moment of discussion with his father, Duongsan says to him, "Before studying the Duok Kong of our family, there's something I want you to see." Xiaolong looks towards him, astonished, and asks, "Yes, what is it?" His adorable demeanor catches the attention of the two elderly gentlemen, who exchange smiles. Duongsan, speaking on behalf of the family host, speaks solemnly and respectfully to him. "The Wan Dok Den, I assure you, you will." The four members of the family line up, allowing him to go to the back, while the family patriarch leads the way forward. As he curiously looks at the scene behind the courtyard, Duongquan speaks up. "We have all been waiting for this." Duongquan cheerfully tells him, "This is the moment you officially step into the Wandok Den as a member of our family. This is our clan's tradition, with the whole family coming together here." Xiaolong excitedly responds, and the elderly master also eagerly anticipates. After finishing his sentence, Xiaolong's breath becomes rapid, his face turning red because he's about to enter the Wan Dok Den to witness many wondrous things. Xiaolong thinks that the Wan Dok Den must be a place that stores all. In front of him stands a beautiful young woman confidently showcasing herself in the morning sunlight. He is dumbfounded, his cheeks reddening uncontrollably. He thinks to himself, indeed, a beauty like her is as lovely as a painting. Hoan's parents, who have been observing his reactions since earlier, exchange amused smiles as they see their future son-in-law admiring their daughter so intensely. Hoan speaks up to remind him. Xiaolong must look in Duong's direction. Embarrassed, he quickly responds awkwardly, "Yes, father?" After speaking, she pulls Xiaolong to take a tour of the Wan Dok Den and adds that she will show him the strongest poisons of the family sect, starting with Tiu Hong Kim. Hoan continues, looking increasingly embarrassed. "This is the Tan Kong poison, a type of poison that martial artists must be particularly careful with." Hoan's face suddenly becomes serious as she tells everyone, "All of these are powerful poisons." She hands Xiaolong a small pea, saying, "Hold this." Xiaolong, still bewildered, asks Hoan, "What is this?" Seeing the tiny pea in his hand, he thinks it looks like a fen bean. Hoan explains, "Despite the poison of the 10 great poisonous creatures, this is the strongest poison currently." She adds, "This herb symbolizes our sect, the Hat Dao Dao." Xiaolong initially looks puzzled, wondering to himself, "Hat Dao Dao?" After receiving the order, the lone person there shouts loudly to a lock and a row to open the door. The three of them immediately respond, folding their hands and signaling that it's clear. As for Xiao, after receiving the order, the lone person there loudly shouts to a lock and a row to open the door. As the two doors are fully opened, a lock and a row appear exhausted, each sitting on one side, panting heavily and drenched in sweat as if they've lost all their strength. The man guarding the door sees that everything is done and turns around, signaling everyone to come in. Duongsan quickly gestures for Xiaolong to enter, saying, "Let's go in." As he steps inside, he says, "This is the iron gate made from the sturdy cane of a male man. Opening this gate is a great honor." Xiaolong is surprised and responds, "Oh, really? Why is that?" Duongsan also quickly gestures to Tiolong, telling him, "Let's go in." As they stepped inside, he said, "This is the iron gate made from the sturdy stalks of Nam Man. Opening this gate is also a great honor." Tiolong replied in surprise, "Oh, really? Why is that?" Once everyone was inside, Duongsun cheerfully said, "We've arrived." Tiolong gaped, looking at everything with astonished eyes. Besides, Duongsan added, "This is the treasure house containing all kinds of poisons and medicines of the Duong family, Tu Suyen." Duongquan introduced to his son-in-law once again, "This is the Wandok Duong of the Wandok Den. Be careful, don't touch anything." He curiously replied, "I understand. "So this is the Wandok Duong. Why is it stored in bottles and medicine pouches?" Duongson quickly answered, "Yes, here we have many different kinds of poisons and medicines, such as mace poison and Thui Mien poison." As soon as he finished speaking, he discreetly pushed the boat over to the two children by kicking him over to Hoa-an. He said, "Huanan, please explain to Tiolong. I'm sure my son-in-law will prefer that." The wife next to him, seeing this, quickly understood and nodded to the two. "Oh my, that's right." Hoa-an did not show any sign of opposing their opinions. Instead, she blushed and replied, "Yes, father." After speaking, she pulled Tiolong to take a tour of the Wandok Duong and said, "Come here, I will show you the strongest poisons of our sect, starting with Tiohong Kim." The more Hoa-an spoke, the more she seemed embarrassed. "These are offensive poisons that martial artists must be particularly careful with. If inhaled, you won't be able to use your internal skills, so be careful. Duan Chuang poison, Diet Han poison, Huyet Han poison, and 7 types of Duan Han poison." Seeing their daughter pointing out many deadly poisons of the Duong family, the parents along with Duong Quan smiled softly at each other, saying, "They are both so adorable." Indeed. Facing Hoa-an, her expression suddenly became serious as she said, "All of these are powerful poisons, and the strongest type in our sect is another kind." After speaking, she handed a tiny pea into Tiolong's hand, saying, "Hold this." At first, Tiolong looked at her, still bewildered, and asked Hoa-an, "What is this?" Seeing the tiny pea in his hand, he thinks it looks like a fen bean. Hoa-an explains, "Despite the poison of the 10 great poisonous creatures, this is the strongest poison currently." She continues, "This is the Tan Kong poison, a type of poison that martial artists must be particularly careful with. If inhaled, you won't be able to use your internal skills. This is racing. Racing is a type of Buman's curly hair. Just 2 milligrams are enough to kill an adult. It is famous for the assassination with an umbrella of a dissident Boria during the Cold War." He panicked and exclaimed that it is even stronger than Xianhua by 100,000 times. Hoa-an smiled brightly and told Xiaolong that this is the poison closest to Duongmon's colorless, tasteless, invisible target. Therefore, this poison is the most lethal and most valuable type among all poisons. She also explained that killing someone with this poison is a precise assassination. After speaking, it seemed that Xiaolong felt a blazing fire around Hoa-an, and at the same time heard her instruct him to remember well. "Xiaolong, the strongest poison is not the one that causes the most pain or is the most horrifying, but the one that kills people silently and surely. Duonggatu Suyen's deadly strike is aimed at being silent and certain." In Xiaolong's mind, countless images of family members suddenly surged, thinking if they were in his future until now, he realized and silently affirmed that the family is full of assassins. Immediately after, a voice interrupted their conversation, saying, "That's enough now." Duong Quan from afar spoke next. "Let's go see the animals that Xiaolong has been longing for." Xiaolong then appeared excited and replied to the speaker, "What about animals?" The old man also offered to him, saying, Duong Quan spoke, giving instructions to everyone, "Then let's go right now." Before the old man could finish his sentence, an urgent message was brought from afar, causing them to pause. The family master had an urgent matter to report. Nyan ran swiftly from afar and arrived at everyone's place. Duong San, seeing this, worriedly asked, "Ninin, is something wrong?" After catching his breath, he immediately reported to Duong San and everyone, "You need to go to Huyenvu clan immediately." He curiously asked Huyenvu clan, "Why did you come here?" Ninin quickly recounted that the elders of the family. Just as he finished speaking, Duong Quan got enraged, shouting loudly, "What do they want from us?" Xiaolong secretly recalled that the family elders are members of the branch she had mentioned. "Aren't they?" Chu Dai raised his hand quickly and said, "There are 2 matters. One is that the medicine we sent to the family master Tu Shuyan was ineffective, and he has sent a complaint letter. The other matter is that," Ninin said, looking at Xiaolong in front of him with an embarrassed expression and a gloomy tone. Understanding what he meant, Xiaolong sighed deeply. Unexpectedly, he spoke directly. "It's about the poison attack." Duong Quan didn't seem too surprised and replied, "Is the news true?" After saying that, the old man left with everyone, telling Xiaolong, "Let's go. My son-in-law can come with us." After a while of their journey, finally at Huyenvu clan, there were many elderly people busily discussing something. Seeing that everyone had arrived, one of them suddenly shouted, calling Duong San by name. Not even had they just met and greeted, but they already started scolding furiously. Why did you unilaterally decide on such an important matter? Is that right? How could you marry our precious daughter Hoang-an to an orphan child of unknown lineage? Upon hearing this, Duong-san clenched his teeth and asked them, "The orphan has no lineage." He was furious, his anger rising sky high in front of everyone, protecting Xiaolong. He said, "Are you insulting my son-in-law?" They quickly lost their temper, each going their own way. "No, it's not. It's the truth." Duong Quan approached them and asked, "Am I the one who decided this? Do you have any objections?" The elderly elders hesitated awkwardly before the question from their senior family master. Xiaolong, listening to the malicious attacks from outside, showed his dissatisfaction. He said, "Senior family master, please advise. Our family master has just agreed." Seeing that the smile was gone from Xiaolong's face, Hoan softly apologized to him for the inconvenience. Even Xiaolong helplessly complained, "Oh my God," he sighed and thought to himself, "I've made her worry again." While the elders were still arguing, he suddenly spoke up to apologize for interrupting the conversation of the senior elders. He seriously said, "This matter seems to be because of my own incompetence." After saying that, he patted his shoulder proudly and shouted, "If I demonstrate my abilities, will the senior elders accept it?" The old man from afar became surprised and a bit confused, asking again to make sure, "Are you wrong about something?" With that confident look, he declared, "For example, solving the difficult problem of the family master Tu Shuyan." Hoa An, along with Duong Funyan beside her, were worried about him and frantically scolded, "Xiaolong, what are you planning to do? Although I'm not someone who likes to save face, if anyone dares to disrupt the peaceful life next to my pets, then I will not let it go." In the big courtyard, everyone was in chaos because Xiaolong dared to challenge the senior elders were very angry. "You dare to." An eldest son with long white hair had to loudly scold the elders, saying, "A kid like you dares to interfere? Others are also joining in criticizing you. Yes, moreover, do you know the content of Family Master Tushian's letter before speaking?" Wenyi, along with Duong Funyan, were also watching this argument. The family master said, "Look, he has no roots to interfere in our affairs, so we have appointed a young man from a prestigious family to be a son-in-law." Listening to their ramblings, he dejectedly thought to himself, "These old men, I can't take it anymore. I'm really angry." Just remember the live stream where you were wrapped in a cobra was receiving a lot of feedback. You have over 1,000 subscribers and an average of more than. With your status as Xiaolong, you have every reason to respond to the village elders. I've heard that the elders haven't officially recognized you as a son-in-law of the Duan family, so technically you are still a guest. Naturally, with such a large fan base, being attacked without reason, Xiaolong continuously explained, causing Duanshan beside him to also be impressed. Moreover, you not only helped Huang Anni, the Duan family's treasure, but also saved the family's master by eliminating the blood beast. Lasat Xiaolong clasped his hands to show sincerity, then continued, "How dare the elders insult a benefactor and esteemed guest right in front of us? Is this not the protocol and etiquette of the Duan family? Being a streamer and being attacked by many people is so commonplace that it's almost endearing." With full experience, Xiaolong swiftly turned the situation around. The elders who were previously angry were now scratching their heads and saying, "That's not the case. We were just a bit hasty, so we misspoke." You are extremely satisfied, smiling contemptuously, thinking it's you. There are still some concerns, such as whether La Sat Thak Van Duong is a blood beast. Anyway, eliminating him is also unreasonable. Duan Shan brought evidence to protect you. Xiaolong is not lying. "Look at this," he said, causing the elder beside him to gape. "A girl. What is this?" As he opened the book, they were shocked and muttered, "The Blood Beast Poison Cauldron Manual is written in blood, indeed from the blood sect." Duan Shan told his son-in-law, Xiaolong, "Let us see Ngo Kong." You obediently responded, "Yes, sir." The accompanist and others nearby wondered, "Ngo Kong?" You called out your treasures. Yes, they spread around your hands, making everyone curious to watch the little darlings. Everyone witnessed something protruding from your sleeves. Cute little creatures began to appear and make noises to prove their existence. The people around were stunned and asked, "Huh? Golden centipede?" Duanshan spoke up. "It's Thanbang's child, Ngokong. My son-in-law is raising it. If I say they killed Thak Van Duong, do you believe it?" The elders were flustered because they couldn't believe their ears. Ah, Thanba, this young man can control Thanbango Kong? He continued with a very satisfied look. If I can't acknowledge this son-in-law, what should I call him? Xiaolong beside me is also laughing happily, and even told these creatures, little darlings, don't bite people, or else you'll end up dead like Thak Van Duong. The elders were so astonished they were speechless. Now they turned around. We never said we didn't acknowledge him. It's just that there are procedures to follow, and because you skipped them, the master is angry. Duanjun sighed and said, Fine, we can overlook the son-in-law issue, but why not agree on the Van Doc Dien? The elders argued back. He is not officially part of the clan yet, and how can we entrust such an important Van Doc Dien to a minor? Upon hearing this, the old man began to hesitate. Indeed, how can we entrust such an important Van Doc Dien? Then it's simple. Duanjun proposed a solution. Can you prove your abilities? Xiaolong responded, Of course. He confidently affirmed, To prove that I deserve the Duan family, the family will handle it their way. And that way is by using poisons. Upon hearing this, everyone grabbed their heads in fear. A girl, what? People started fidgeting. You want to use poison to subdue Chu Tu Shuyen? We're talking about sending medicine, not killing people. Even Duanjun and Duanshan looked at you with puzzled expressions, but you didn't understand anything. You blankly asked again, Master, what do you think? Naturally, he whispered to himself, the Duan family doesn't use poisons, right? The next day, Xiaolong arrived and Duanjun was training. The old man told you, all right, if you want to take on the challenge, go ahead. But starting today, you will begin learning the Duan family's 5 poison techniques. Upon hearing this, but thinking about having to train, you wondered, is it still just physical training? The old man replied, your body will adapt to the martial arts as you train. Duanjun taught the class. Our sect focuses on practicality, so you will learn things that can be immediately applied in actual combat. He then handed you the family's formidable weapons. Duanjun introduced them one by one, hidden weapons, spike coins, thrown weapons, swords, and dao, a type of saber. Although there are many other types of hidden weapons, these 5 are the main ones. He asked, do you know which hidden weapon is the easiest to use? You hesitated and replied, probably the gam or fi dao. Duanjun acknowledged, correct. So which one is the hardest to use? Xiaolong looked at the small spikes and answered, probably the XA, because you have to sprinkle the powder. This is not entirely correct. The hardest to use is the tram. You admired, why tram? Because it is small and slender, making it hard to throw. He provided a reason. You have to remember the exact position where you threw it. So he demonstrated while explaining. Xiaolong was astonished when Duanjun pulled out a feathered pen. Duanjun skillfully disassembled the pen. In an instant, the feathered pen disappeared, and pieces scattered across the sky. Xiaolong watched in amazement. Each strand, light as a feather, turned pure white. Unexpectedly, they transformed into sharp pieces, ready to attack the ground. Duanjun crossed his arms calmly, while Xiaolong fearfully hunched his shoulders. Seeing this phenomenon, you feared, thinking, the bird feathers are piercing my flesh like needles. Your wide eyes watched the feathers dance in sharp motions. Duanjun explained, there is a type of hidden weapon in our sect called Man Thien Hoa Vu. It's a technique of our sect that covers the entire area with hundreds of thousands of needles. At this point, you interrupted, so we have to fight the enemy while surrounded by needles. What if someone asks, if there are needles everywhere, where can we stand? He replied, therefore you must remember the positions carefully to avoid harming yourself. Xiaolong silently thought, heaven and earth, oh my. You wondered, so even if the positions of the needles are pushed away or fall down by the opponent, you have to remember all of them? He nodded. Of course. He added, if it's 5 poisons, you must remember at least 100 positions. Huang Ni already remembers 1,000 positions when she was a prodigy. Xiaolong smirked. Scene transition. The peaceful sky atop the mountain, the clear blue filled with energy. Yet, Xiaolong was exhausted, lying face down on the ground. Huang Ni approached to check on Xiaolong. Is this okay? You greeted Huang Ni. Miss. You continued. I heard you were planning to capture Hung Fong, so I prepared. If you don't need it, then... You immediately clarified. No problem, I was planning to wait. But if I have this, I can capture you myself. Huang Ni was surprised. Wait, so you're planning to wait for Hung Fong? Xiaolong nodded awkwardly. You'll understand when the time comes. Huang Ni was innocent. Really? Xiaolong initiated a conversation. Do you know where Hung Fong's clan is located? She replied. I have found a clan, and it's nearby. We can go there immediately. She hesitated. But you've read the letter from Chu to Shuyan, right? You replied. Yes, of course. After hearing this, she asked again. Xiaolong is still young, so I'm a bit worried if you fully understand the content of the letter. You softly responded. Ah, you continued. Of course, miss. That letter is very important for the male vitality. Upon hearing this, she awkwardly advised you to stop. Enough already. Then she added, you seem to understand the problem well, don't you? The big problem that Chu Tushian is facing is, helplessly, she praised you. Xiaolong, you're really understanding. Considering your age, you stammered, ah, it's because I live alone, so? Suddenly, she quickly ran away. Let's go quickly. Xiaolong had to chase after her. Miss Huang Ni. Two people enter a deep forest where the trees are dense and wildflowers bloom along the path. Xiaolong is attracted by a small animal climbing the yerba flower and has to grab its neck to stop it. The two stop at a spot. Hyangganchi tells him, we've arrived. Xiaolong replies, ah, we're here. Looking at that cave, they are definitely here. While putting on protective gear, Hyangganchi asks Xiaolong, but Xiaolong, what is the purpose of finding the hornet's nest? You explain to your fiancé, although we are going to find the Hung Fong, we will not capture them. She is surprised. Really? The two carefully search through each crevice and you carefully look into the cave while telling her, the poisonous insects we need are usually found in small hornet nests. Hyangganchi wonders, poisonous insects live in hornet nests, don't they? Yes. As soon as he spots something, Xiaolong happily says to her, lucky us, it seems we've found the hornet's nest. With a swift hand, he uses chopsticks to grab the small prey and exclaims, caught you, you little brat! Hyangganchi's eyes widen in astonishment. She asks Xiaolong, could it be that you came here not to capture the Hung Fong, but to capture this insect? He excitedly exclaims, this creature will solve the problem of the clan's leader, Tushuyan. Hyanggan observes the creature in Xiaolong's hand and says with some uncertainty, Xiaolong, this insect is a diadem. Hearing her speculate, he raises the trembling creature in his hand before her and smiles. Yes, that's correct. Inside, he is surprised, thinking, they call it diadem here? He brings it closer for her to examine it more carefully. The creature now looks extremely pitiful, with tear-filled eyes and trembling all over. He begins to explain. This insect is found in the Hung Fong's nest in Central Plains. It's called diadem in Korea, known as the leaf-biting bee, and it belongs to the Meloide family. Hyanggan, upon hearing him say that, is surprised. So diadem can be found in the Hung Fong's nest? Why didn't I know this? He cheerfully replies. Their life cycle is quite special. Then he shares his knowledge with her. Their reproduction method is quite strange. Normally, when they lay eggs, they protect them or create a safe environment for the eggs to hatch. But this species is different. Unlike others, they only lay eggs. The small, oval-shaped yellow eggs can appear on rock ledges, tree trunks, leaves, basically anywhere. Whether in dense or secluded areas, their eggs are likely to be found, they just lay them all in one place without caring about anything else. Anyway, in some miraculous way, the larvae of the leaf-biting bee will hatch and start crawling to the nearest high place. When they reach the top, they will form a strange shape. At this moment, another unexpected thing happens. They stick together and pretend to be a flower, as a reminder never to search for leaf-biting bee larvae online. When a beautiful honeymaker bee goes to gather nectar and discovers them, she will happily exclaim, "Oh my!" At this moment, the honeymaker bee will fly over, seeing the leaf-biting bees masquerading as a flower. The honeymaker bee is surprised and wonders, when did there ever have flowers here? Thinking they are real flowers, she continues her pollen-gathering work. Their appearance becomes menacing when she realizes what she will do next. Her hand reaches out. When they approach her hand maliciously, reaching towards the honeymaker bee, they quickly cling all over her. And so the game ends. The honeymaker, he points his finger towards the diadem in his hand and says, I don't know why they choose the honeymaker bee, but I heard it's the best environment for diadem larvae to develop. Hyanggan hesitantly says, Is that so? She slightly bows down, heartbroken, saying, Poor, adorable honeymaker bees. Xiaolong smiles, comforting her. It's the law of nature. There's no other way. She reaches up to touch her head as if remembering something, saying, But isn't this poison type that causes burns? I know that eating a lot will kill you. He laughs and confirms, yes, it can cause burns. He describes the wounds with red marks on the skin, explaining, the orange liquid secreted from the leaf-biting bee's body contains a poison called kenterion. If this substance comes into contact with the skin, it will cause blisters similar to burns. She looks at the pitiful diadem in front of her, her face turning pale with a hint of redness. She bites her lip, covering her mouth with her hand, and softly says, "But it has that effect?" He responds, "Yes, until the poison is expelled from the body." Seeing her appearance, he squints and laughs jokingly. It can make men erect. Hyungan turns and runs away, the red marks on her face becoming more pronounced. She runs with her eyes closed, shouting, "Enough, let's go back to the Wando clan." Xiaolong, surprised, calls out, wait, let me catch a few more." A while later, the diadem, the leaf-biting bees, have been captured. Then we return to the Wando clan, and I have instructed the fighters on how to prepare the medicine. He looks at the group in front of him and slowly says, "All right, listen carefully." He raises a finger as a signal. "First, let's dry the diadem and then grind them into powder." Everyone's expressions gradually change as complex mathematical formulas run through their minds upon hearing his analysis. If you consume 3 parts, equivalent to 11.75 milligrams of poison, it would certainly be life-threatening, and for each kilogram of body weight, 3.75 milligrams. If you consume 3/10 parts, equivalent to 1.25 milligrams of poison, then half of the people who... He looks at everyone and concludes, "Therefore, let's prepare the medicine with a dosage of 1/10 part, which is 0.375 milligrams, equivalent to about 10 drops of water, that is 0.351 millimolars." After finishing, he asks everyone, "Do you all understand?" Everyone looks stunned, and there is a moment of silence. But in their minds, they think, "He wants to blow our brains out." A man standing at the front removes his face-covering scarf and slowly speaks up. "Your detailed mathematical language today was truly excellent." He emphasizes each word. "We will definitely succeed." Upon hearing this, his expression relaxes and he smiles happily. "Yes, haha, I rely on all of you." That night was a full moon night. In a brightly lit room, a sound echoed. Unexpectedly, diadem has this effect. After hearing his granddaughter recount the process of capturing the diadem and the story in the medicine preparation room, her grandfather says, "It seems we should also review the poisons and medicines that the clan currently possesses." Hyangan obediently responds, "Yes." He raises his hand to his mouth, coughing softly, then continues to ask, "Are you also good at math?" Hyangan replies, "Yes, he has divided 1 part into 10 parts and said that it is equivalent to the weight of 10 drops of water." Upon hearing this, the man's expression becomes serious. He lightly touches his index finger and thumb together, speaking in a low voice. Recalling the still immature appearance of that boy, the ends of his eyebrows gradually return to normal as he speaks in a deep voice. "I thought I knew a lot about poisons and medicines, but he is beyond my imagination. The more I learn about him, the more I realize he is a treasure of our clan." Suddenly, he turns to look at his granddaughter with a questioning tone. "So you like him more than before?" Hyangan shyly speaks up. "Grandfather." Her face flushes slightly, and her eyes don't dare to look directly at her grandfather. She tightly clasps her hands and brings them to her mouth to cover her embarrassment, saying, "I just realized that I was too hasty at first, so I feel sorry." He closes his eyes as if understanding his granddaughter's feelings, then gives advice. "It's okay, just behave well." Suddenly, he asks, "But how do we test the effectiveness of the medicine?" She hears this and is shocked, widening her eyes. It's about recalling that incident." She puts her hand over her now flushed face, feeling as if both her face and hands are hot. In an embarrassed voice, she says, "The elders are too arrogant." Remembering Xiaolong's malicious demeanor when saying that line, implying that the clan will punish them, she tells her grandfather about that statement. After hearing it, he is also astonished and asks, "What?" In an instant, he lifts his head and bursts into laughter. "Ah ha ha! Indeed, he is an interesting guy." Hyangan stands beside him, saying nothing, her face still flushed. The night sky is filled with clouds, creating a dark and silent scene. The forest under that sky seems to be sinking into a deep and mysterious night. Another night passes under the blue sky. The white clouds drift lazily with the wind. In the morning light, the forest awakens like a vivid painting. At this moment, everyone is gathered in a large room, looking at the fighter standing before them. The elders focus their gaze intently on the person in front of them. Some place a hand on their cheek, others clasp their hands in front of their chest. The fighter places a hexagonal wooden box in front of Xiaolong and then speaks up. Xiaolong, here's your medicine. He looks at the box in front of him and says, "Oh, this is." The fighter clasps his hands in front of his chest and explains, "Yes, we have mixed licorice powder and honey to create a sweet taste to make it easier for you to drink." Hearing this, he thinks to himself, very detailed. He opens the box and sees the shiny black medicine pills lying on a red velvet cloth inside, then asks, "Have you prepared it exactly as I instructed?" The other person carefully responds, "Of course, sir. We have strictly adhered to the dosage you prescribed." The old leader outside heard that and became agitated. A person laughed coldly. "Humph, you're overreacting." The person beside him folded his arms in front of his chest, agreeing, "Yes." The man sitting in the main seat closed his eyes, and his authoritative voice echoed. He looked towards Xiaolong and then spoke. "All right, the medicine has been prepared. How will you prove its effectiveness?" Xiaolong heard this and replied. A hand slammed strongly on the table, creating a loud sound and a simultaneous shout. "Of course we have to." The portly old leader was the one who had slammed his hand on the table. He stood up and yelled, "How can we send an untested poison to the clan leader Tu Shuyan?" The person sitting beside him also chimed in. "Yes, if there." Xiaolong looked towards the warrior and spoke. Then there's no other way." The other warrior nodded and answered, "Yes," while putting his hand into his jacket pocket. The old leader saw that posture and looked up, observing. The warrior walked beside the old leader and placed a hexagonal box of medicine on the table, similar to Xiaolong's box, in front of the portly old. He then took out a pill, examined it with disdain. "You want us to try the medicine? Who knows what's inside it?" The person beside him, Yin-Yang Guaiqi, reminded, "This kid is not only a foreigner, but also has a dark heart." Xiaolong saw their expressions and smiled maliciously. Grandfather Manhwa was watching a comedy play when he was interrupted by a shout. "Grandfather!" You're sitting there with your two hands tightly clasped under your chin, smoke rising from behind your back, she said with a slightly sinister tone. "Didn't you tell me that those who have cultivated the skills of our sect are not afraid of any poison? Is that not the case?" You clap your hands together, looking still childlike, acting provocative. But seeing their scared faces, the one called grandfather raises his hand, showing agreement. Seems like what the brother-in-law said is true." Feeling everything was following the script, seeing everyone's grim faces, the girl said in a loud voice, "All of you are clan elders who have reached the peak of immunity. You've added more? Could it be that you're afraid?" Sure enough, the old leader crushed the pill with a smile full of confidence. The group laughed with delight as they saw everyone take the pill in turn. One spoke disdainfully, "Who fears such low-grade poison?" Another person responded, "Yes, you've misjudged us." One elder, having taken the pill, threatened, "If this medicine doesn't work, you'll see that we'll reestablish discipline in the clan." After speaking, he kept his mouth closed, chewed the pill thoroughly. The atmosphere became quiet as everyone awaited the transformation. After a long while with no change, a man laughed coldly. He pointed at Xiaolong and shouted, "See, nothing happened." Before he could finish speaking, he was struck down as his disciple suddenly raised his head. The group of elders bowed their heads in a grave manner. The atmosphere was both quiet and a bit eerie. That day, the clan's discipline was under the glaring sunlight. A voice rang out, "Please send the medicine to clan leader Tishuyan. It is very effective." Shortly after, the elders left with very strange demeanors. Each hurriedly walked with their hands tightly holding their sleeves in front of. Seeing the reddened faces of those leaving, Xiaolong said, "As grandfather said, as long as you provoke them about the poison, they will fall into the trap immediately." He also laughed and replied, Grandfather Manhwa laughed again, reminding, "But don't hate them. They do it for the clan." Xiaolong heard this and asked. He closed his eyes serenely. "After all, they are from the same family." Xiaolong obediently replied, "I understand." She was running and worried, saying, "Little Xiaolong, something big has happened." Seeing her like that, he immediately asked, "What's the matter, miss?" She bowed her head and sighed, opening her mouth. "Our." She slowly stood up, adjusted her breathing, and said, "Our pet has a problem." Hearing this, he was surprised and spoke up. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his collar tightly, lifting him up with a sound close to his brother. His face was full of anger, eyes blazing, asking, "What do you mean, our what?" His hand clutching his jacket, his veins bulging, he angrily looked at Xiaolong. "Do you two have children? It seems I haven't taught you well enough. Huang An stood beside, shocked. She shook her head, both angry and embarrassed, saying, "Not children, but foolish gong." Xiaolong was nurturing them, and now it was his turn. Huang An was. He opened his mouth wide, but remained silent for a while. Grandfather let go of his collar. He walked in front of Huang An, looking worried, and asked again, "You mean Ngokong?" She hurriedly explained, "Recently, I saw Huin practicing more, so I asked my aunt to take care of the little Ngokong." Hearing this, he thought to himself, "Our beloved kids must be in trouble." In a confused panic, his gaze shifted to her chest. He said, "Let me see." In the ear of Grandfather Ngan, the irritated voice of his niece echoed, "Ah, Xiaolong isn't." After a while, the two saw the Enjo Kong lying obediently on the ground. Ignoring the reddened hand marks on his face, he whispered, "She said they suddenly moved." Huang An tightly clenched her hand and said, "They have been fine since morning. I hope they aren't hurt." He looked at the adorable Enjo Kong lying on the ground and commented, "Their colors are also clear," and his eyes suddenly lit up, thinking to himself, "It's here." He laughed and spoke to the person beside him. Miss Ngan seems not to. Seeing the Engo Kong slowly moving, he gradually explained, "They are just shedding their skins, like snakes when they grow. They molt. Maybe it's time." Grandfather Hoengan was surprised. "Molting? Are they already rebels?" He leaned against the wall and answered. Suddenly, one Ngo Kong rubbed its head on the ground. A rustling sound echoed. Huang hurriedly called, "Xiaolong, look!" Seeing the Ngo Kong with a new yellow-orange skin slowly emerging from the old shell, she shouted, "The heck!" The group saw that the Ngo Kong had completely shed the old shell. The old man's voice showed his pleasure. "Oh, it's truly miraculous." Huang An was also watching attentively and suddenly exclaimed. Another Ngo Kong slowly crawled out of the shell. The yellow-orange shell felt soft, making one want to touch it. Finally, it gently shed the old coat and its body moved slowly. Seeing all three Ngo Kong lying obedient, he was happy and said, "They've all molted." Huang An's eyes shone brightly as she looked at them and said, "It seems they are." She turned to Xiaolong and asked, "What are their names?" He hesitated slightly, thinking to himself. He showed a thoughtful expression, putting his hand on his chin, thinking for a while. Looking at the three Ngo Kong on the ground, he considered them intelligent and shouted, "Ngo Nyat, Ngo Nyi, Ngo Tam." Huang An heard these funny names and shook her head, continuously thinking about the day these small, adorable Ngo Kong might fly in the sky over high mountains. She turned to him and explained, "If Ngo Kong lives 1,000 years, they will transform into dragons. We need more majestic names suitable for dragons." Hearing this, he couldn't help but laugh and said, "Haha, Miss Ngan, how could Ngo..." Grandfather Hoengan, hearing their discussion, interjected, "But anyway, 1,000-year-old Ngo Kong is still called a dragon. We call them Tian Long, heavenly dragons." Hearing his tone, she understood Hoengan's attitude earlier, and at the last moment, looking at the three, he carefully thought and said, After making up his mind, he turned to Hoengan and said, "Call them So, Huang, and Ban." She was surprised and repeated. He slowly explained, "The first to emerge is Xo, the second looks like a female, so the second is Huang, meaning fragrance. The third one has a shiny shell called Ban." Huang carefully watches her three children, slowly repeating the three names you just named. Shou, the three of them were still delighted observing the Ngo Kong group. She spoke softly. The children's names are usually given by the father. Xiaolong walked down the road, his swagger making everyone around turn their gaze toward him. As he walked, he thought that after a day passed, the Ngo Kong would cling tightly to. Too exhausted, he sat down next to a barrel by the road, opened his mouth to breathe out. He felt his inner clothes were slightly damp, thinking to himself that his body wasn't completely dry yet, but he could move on. He sighed, his skin still. Suddenly, from inside his clothes, the group of them crawled out, their heads touching his cheek, happily croaking, "Frog, frog, frog." He blinked, smiled, and joked with them, thinking to himself that they have gained a lot. The biggest change, he lay stretched out on the barrel, looked up at the sky. A red mark appeared on his cheek due to friction. The Ngo Kong beside him cried out in consolation, implying an apology for being heavy. Hearing that, the one beside also croaked, "Frog, frog, frog." He sighed, reminiscing that originally they were only as thick. He was happy to see them grow, feeling them move alongside him, thinking to himself that the little Ngo Kong probably also felt his chest tight, and now just clinging to his arms, and suddenly a loud laughter echoed in his ear. "Ha ha, look, what did I say?" He sat up and looked to see two men, one tall, one short, walking down the road. The short man had a mole on his face and was holding a small red bag. He was laughing with the one beside him. "Certainly the Suyen Road is ours. Take your time." The one on the right agreed. All right. He rubbed his head where Ngo Kong was clinging to him. The loud laughter continued. Making money is so easy! Ha ha ha! He glanced confusedly, wondering what. Looking up at the sky, today was indeed a beautiful day. Each white cloud drifted gently across the clear sky above Sichuan Road. The scenery was still the same. The atmosphere was. The host raised his hand to his mouth, speaking in a satisfied tone. He looked at Xiaolong and then asked, "Aren't you guys the ones who sent the self-prepared medicine to the Sichuan clan a while ago?" Hearing this, he nodded. Thinking of his plump figure, he was so happy that tears welled up. His round thumbs showed approval. He announced that the medicine had been used very well, so the clan leader sent a lot of reward money along with thanks. The two heard this and were very happy. He happily asked. His father-in-law, Hoang-an, laughed loudly. "You're newly a son-in-law, and I've quickly benefited. You've helped me a lot." He scratched his ear awkwardly and laughed. "Ha ha!" Suddenly, he withdrew his cheerfulness, speaking in a deep voice. He did not brush the hairs on his face. Looking straight at him, he slowly said, "I will give you a spiritual elixir. Even if I give it to you, you would modestly..." He was shocked and asked again about the spiritual elixir. He thought of his father's earlier words. Before, he said that a spiritual elixir would... Hoang-an suddenly interjected. "Father, if it's a spiritual elixir, what is it?" He answered in a low voice. "It's nothing." He looked at the two, then slowly said each word. "Honey of King Kim Maofeng." Xiaolong thought of bees collecting. He thought to himself, "Honey? I've heard that to become a master, internal power is very important, so I'll take it." He happily agreed, saying loudly, "Thank you, father-in-law." Hoang-an's expression suddenly changed. She was no longer as happy as before. She wasn't happy or sad, but spoke up. "Father, why only honey as a reward?" Her father saw her daughter like that and looked embarrassed. He stammered, "Ah, about that." Without letting him finish, she grabbed Xiaolong's arm and raised it, speaking with fiery anger. This time, Xiaolong's job isn't a small matter. Although King Kim Maofeng's honey is of medium quality, it's the lowest among spiritual elixirs. You can't just save the reward for Xiaolong. Your brother has merited it. She frowned, demanding the reward back. At least it should. Her father lowered his gaze, his voice also lowered. Even if it's a spiritual elixir, refining it is expensive. She heard this and squeezed her hands tightly, her eyes like small torches, her whole body blazing with anger. She gritted her teeth. Compared to what Xiaolong... On this side, her father tilted his face away, covered his mouth, coughing, silently shedding tears. As a big daughter, 8 tears poured down. Xiaolong spoke up, breaking the atmosphere. He looked at him and asked, "Father-in-law, what is King Kim Maofeng?" Her father was indifferent. "Ah, of course, it looks like a bee." He heard this, then turned around, speaking in a husky voice. He thought of the large golden beehive on the branch, each bee diligently collecting honey, flying away and then returning. He explained, "King Kim Maofeng is a medium-grade venomous parasitic worm, usually found in forests. It's a large bee, about the size of a small..." But what Xiaolong was concerned about was the size of King Kim Maofeng. His eyes shining like stars, enthusiastically asked again. Seeing his agitated look, Hoang-an turned her cheeks to stop him. "Xiaolong, brother, please wait a moment. I'm very angry." At this moment, her father spoke again, looking somewhat embarrassed. "Hoang-an Yi, it's not what I meant. I thought Xiaolong would want to go directly to find King Kim." He quickly stood up, his voice full of excitement. "Father-in-law wants me to go directly to find King Kim Maofeng." He also raised his thumb to confirm. His breath was heavy, his face flushed red from excitement. He thought to himself, "Go directly to collect honey? When I was a YouTuber, I went to collect honey." He hurried to the door, shouting loudly, "Let's go! Father-in-law to collect honey, then I'm very proficient." His father-in-law was also excited, laughing loudly. "Ha ha ha! I knew you'd like..." Hoang-an sighed, watching the two leave. On his he left Sichuan Road. The honey-collecting trip had begun. On the way, he thought to himself, "Because that's valuable information my father-in-law gave, I think there will be no other competitors." Unexpectedly, upon arrival, he saw 2 groups of people arguing loudly. A scar-faced man spoke up. The group heard this and were surprised, thinking to themselves, "Huh?" On the side, the scar-faced man heard this and asked again, "You bought the information? We also bought it. How else could you have bought it from a guy with messy hair and a big mole on his face?" The man in black couldn't hide his surprise. Xiaolong's face became stiff. He thought of the 2 people he saw on the road, a guy with messy hair and a big mole on his face. How could they be them? Xiaolong realized they had sold information to both the... Hoang-an had been listening to the conversation earlier. Now her whole body trembled with anger. He clenched his hands, pressed his lips, and cursed silently. "Those bastards!" His shouting echoed, "How dare you!" The group heard this and turned to look, their faces showing astonishment. A man exclaimed, "What?" Xuan Road. Xiaolong laughed bitterly. "My honey collecting plan." Xiaolong recalled that before starting the trip, his father-in-law Huang'an had carefully advised him, "Because this is your first time stepping into the sect, you must be extremely careful and absolutely not forget that you are a member of the sect." He glanced and signaled him to look down. Looking at the group standing properly below, he sternly said, "Please lead them. You also have to learn how to use people gradually." Xiaolong was astonished, asking again, "Sir, you want—" He looked at Huang'an standing behind, puzzled, and said, "But, young Miss Huang'an." She didn't let him finish his sentence and laughed loudly. "Ha ha, this kid Huang'an Ni is my person. You are my life partner. You are—" He felt embarrassed, blushing, awkwardly saying, "Friend." His life partner Huang'an also laughed happily, encouraging, "Brother, you'll do well." After speaking, she added, "I will also help you." Hearing this, he became even more embarrassed, replying, "Yes, I will try my—" At that moment, the group of Sichuan Road and the ones who came first were staring at each other. Xiaolong was worried, thinking to himself. He turned to the man beside him, the team leader of the blood sect, Team Yet Jiang, to get his attention. "What should we do about this? Let's share the rice with them." Yet Jiang put his hand on his chin, speaking in a low voice. He crossed his arms in front of his chest, contemptuously saying, "Who are they to demand Sichuan Road? We will divide our share." Huang'an also voiced her agreement. She looked toward the opposing group, her eyes showing venom. Her voice also deepened. "They dare to sell information that Sichuan—" The leader recognized her and was astonished, saying, "You like the honey of King Nuyet?" The man behind heard this and panicked, shouting, "King Yu—" The leader hurriedly clasped his hands in front of his chest, grinding his teeth. He bowed his head and said, "Feng Van, if you don't know that this is related to Sichuan Road, we will retreat." The surrounding people saw his actions and were astonished, understanding the reason. They successively clasped their hands and bowed their heads, saying, "Van Homon, we also withdraw. We will go another way. Damn it, I will catch and peel off that Bangok Kui of the Sat sect." Seeing the people run away as if encountering a ghost, Xiaolong was amazed, thinking to himself, "Is that how it goes? Our Sichuan Road, this—" Seeing the people disappear, he asked, "And then?" Guetjiang replied in a deep voice, "Probably not." He spoke his conjecture. "They will hide somewhere. Those Sai sect people wouldn't just retreat like that." He clasped his hands behind his back, explaining, "First of all, they will find a good position nearby. Clearly, they are hiding nearby and waiting for an opportunity." He turned to his subordinate Chubai. "Please determine their location." Chubai clasped his hands in front. "Respect—" "I see the worry still on your face, Hua Yin." "Don't worry, Xiaolong, everything is fine." You look towards the vast forest and mountains in front and whisper, At this moment, Hua Yin, Xiaolong, and Yet Jiang are hiding. In front of them is a large tree. Near the base of the tree on the ground appears a big hollow, with several large bees. Upon closer inspection, the bees are black and yellow with thick fur. The swarm of bees continuously flies in and out of the tree trunk. Xiaolong is astonished and exclaims, "That's the golden hair wind king. Hua Yin, I'm also seeing it for the first time. It's—" Your excited face, saying it's very cute. Hua Yin quickly praises its fluffy appearance. Yet Jiang is pleased and says, "That's why it's called the golden hair wind king." After observing for a long while, you deduce that the colony is relatively small, only a few hundred bees. If it's the wind king— Hua Yin, hearing something new, asks again. You patiently explain, "That's the common term for a wind king colony. Usually, a hive has about 5,000. She hears the explanation and is surprised. "You can tell without going inside?" Xiaolong confidently replies, "Yes, just by observing the number of bees entering, and at this moment, footsteps sound behind, making the group turn around to look. Cao Bai kneels on one knee on the ground and announces, "The master has found the 4 clans." Yet Jiang, hearing this, asks, "Where are—" Cao Bai tightly closes his eyes and hesitates to speak. He recounts his observation and tracking process. As predicted, they are setting up a fire, waiting for him. I couldn't help but curse them. Damn it, they're indeed on the opposite side, although I can't see clearly what they're doing. Wit Jiang, after hearing the report, strokes her chin thoughtfully. They must be waiting for nightfall to harvest honey using their method. Xiaolong he sees your curiosity and explains, if we burn mugwort leaves and let the smoke enter the hive, the bees will become calmer. Then we can enter and collect the honey. You hear this and quickly praise, "Oh, that's it." Cao Bai beside you hesitantly interjects, but the wind is blowing towards us now. Everyone looks up as the group does, and as Cowbai said, the wind is blowing their way. Everyone exclaims, "Ah!" While everyone is still worried, Xiaolong clenches his fists and bangs his other hand on the table, joyfully exclaiming, "We got it!" Kobai hurriedly asks. His face briefly flushes with excitement as he shares his thoughts. "If the wind is blowing our way, doesn't that mean we can mask our scent?" Huayin thinks and replies, "Exactly." He stands abruptly, looks towards the base of the tree and shouts, "Let's go for a bit and come back immediately." Hearing this, Huayin is horrified. Seeing you run, she hurriedly pulls your sleeve tightly to hold you back. "No, Xiaolong, the golden hair Wind King is a mid-level dangerous creature." Hearing this, not only are you not scared, but you're even more determined. Just once, suddenly a large boulder rolls towards them, making both of you astonished and exclaim. The boulder continues moving forward with a loud, rumbling sound. It moves towards the golden hair Wind King's hive, and then both of you panic as you watch the scene before you. Xiaolong trembles and shouts. From within the tree trunk, the bees continuously swarm out, one after another. Huayin quickly hugs you and runs in the opposite direction, scared, saying, "First, run." Xiaolong, being tightly hugged by her, finds it difficult to move and shouts, "Yes." The forest, which was originally quiet, becomes noisy. Then chaos ensues above the dense forest. The sky gradually turns to evening, and the forest is covered with a thin layer of cocoa. Xiaolong sits level on a rock, pondering and dejectedly muttering, there's no—" He tightly closes his eyes, trying to calm himself and organize his thoughts. "We have to go against the wind to the fire group, but we're trapped between the 4 clans people and the 7 winds." Thinking about the bees with their fluffy wings like clouds, he opens his eyes, touches his chin, and recalls the scene where Huayin hugged him and ran away earlier. He can't help but feel a chill down his spine. Even 30 meters away, someone behind him suddenly calls out, "Xiaolong, come here." Hearing this, he turns around to see who it is. He speaks up, "Ah, Huayin, miss." Huayin brings 2 worker bees lying on her shoulders. With both hands, she holds another bee and presents it in front of him, then happily says, "It seems they've eaten everything because they've been flying around in circles, so I brought them here." Looking at the worker bees continuously making a goo-goo-goo sound, the worker bees relocate above him. Xiaolong watches them continuously making goo-goo sounds and gently says, "They've become calmer now." Huayin sits down beside him. Although neither of them speaks a word, the atmosphere is extremely... After sitting together for a long time, Huayin turns to him and breaks the silent atmosphere. "Is there anything else we can gather?" Hearing this, he hesitantly replies, "Ah, I want to observe more." She responds, "Ah, sorry for always urging you, Xiaolong. Take your time to think calmly. There's no need to..." Hearing this, he feels the pressure increase. Without saying anything, he smiles inwardly, smiling wryly. "Ha ha, you're urging me." Suddenly, Huayin looks ahead and shouts, "Breath!" Xiaolong looks over to the other side. In the distance near the tree trunk, 2 monkeys are fighting a few bees hovering near the base of the tree. A chaotic sound echoes. She says, "Are they fighting?" Hearing this, he is astonished. One monkey raises both hands high to threaten the opponent, continuously making threatening sounds. The other doesn't show any weakness. Seeing them like that, Huayin covers her mouth and exclaims, "Oh my god, they must be really angry." Xiaolong remains. Suddenly, a fragrance wafts past his nose. Xiaolong opens his mouth and calls. He observes his surroundings and says, "There seems to be a smell." "You feel that the fragrance is coming from the golden hair Wind King's hive?" He carefully deduces. Yes." His face becomes distant as he thinks about that deduction. Could it be? He hurriedly points towards the tree trunk in astonishment and shouts, "Miss Huayin, we have to avoid it. Soon the Wind King will go crazy and come here." Huayin, although unaware of what's happening, says, "Ah, I know." She hurriedly stands up, slips her arms under his armpits, hugs him, and runs away as she did before. Xiaolong is... As the 2 jump up high and run, a loud explosion echoes below, with earth and rocks flying everywhere. Huayin holds him as they land, both sliding long. Her body stiffens, her face briefly stunned as she looks at the scene. Seeing the swarm of bees rushing out, she stammers, "Oh my god!" On the ground, the bodies of the 2 monkeys have exploded. The swarm of bees is swarming down, with one monkey whimpering in pain. Large swellings appear on the monkey's arms as the bees joyfully come to feast. Seeing the 2 monkeys become a feast for the bees, Huayin can't help but be scared and says, "Almost a big problem, you heard?" She turns to him curiously and asks, "But Xiaolong, how did you know the golden hair Wind King would attack like that?" Clearly, you told me to avoid it before hearing the sound of the golden hair. He remembers the fragrance emanating from the tree trunk and hesitantly says, "Ah, it's because of the smell." She asks, Huayin thinks and says, "Upon reconsideration, it seems like the smell is pheromone." Hearing that, he sees her face has returned to calmness and thinks to himself, how could Huayin distinguish pheromone? To verify the information, he asks her, "Do you know the fragrance from earlier?" Huayin smiles and replies, "Ah." Then she continues, "The smell from earlier is similar to pheromone." Before she finishes speaking, he rushes over to tightly hold both her shoulders, joyfully saying, "That's it!" Huayin shyly exclaims. Overwhelmed with joy, he buries his face in her shoulders and cries, hoo hoo hoo." Feeling the two of them are quite intimate, her face turns even redder. Nungokong hides inside your chest, peeking his head out. Xiaolong hides her face in her chest, smiling and saying, "We've found a way." In the darkness of the night, people gather around the campfire roasting food, forming separate groups. Around them, some are on strict. A man lifts his head, drinking wine. His cheeks are rosy. He seems quite tipsy. Beside the warm fire, with the fragrant smell of grilled fish, the man drinks, then slaps his mouth and laughs heartily. "Haha, delicious." The person opposite him curiously asks, "Hey, when do you think we'll go get the honey?" The wine-drinking man thinks for a moment and replies, "Not sure yet. 3 days ago, I saw them running around everywhere, and now suddenly, they're quiet." The man speculates they're planning something, and the scar-faced guy agrees, saying, "Probably so." Suddenly he asks, "Hey, did the beehive really get the money?" The other guy laughs, "You've been fooled all your life, haven't you? If it's made from royal wax, which is extremely precious and only usable by royalty, they would definitely just take the honey and discard the hive, leaving the hive for us." The man ponders and laughs sinisterly. "Besides, if they happen to be defeated and all die, haha." The remaining guy hears this and clasps his hands together, mimicking a sinister laugh. Thinking of the girl with a fierce gaze, he says, "Ah, there's also a poisonous flower called the martial flowers. We need to be careful and not let it cause harm anymore." Thinking of her beautiful appearance, he laughs again. "Not what I meant." His opponent licks his lips hungrily. Thinking about it just makes me want to." Remembering the girl makes him itchy all over. The guy next to him jokes, "Who knows? Maybe one of us will end up as their son-in-law." A confident voice rises, "Oh, of course, if you save my life, you must repay it." Suddenly, a strange fragrance wafts through the air, causing him to stop and mutter a sound. The group slowly stands up, murmuring excitedly, "Where is this sweet scent coming from?" Right, maybe it's the scent of poisonous flowers. Haha, indeed, and the aroma must be as enchanting and sweet as it is now. Under the gentle moonlight, the fragrance gradually becomes stronger. Hearing rustling sounds from behind, one guy turns around curiously and asks, what was that sound?" The group urges everyone to stand up, only to see something pitch black in the distance. Unclear what it is. As it gets closer, everyone's faces turn to astonishment, jaws dropping as they exclaim, "What's that?" Someone recognizes it and shouts, "It's the queen bee." Hearing that, everyone panics, jumps up, and urges each other to run quickly and escape. A swarm of bees rushes like rain, each one extremely aggressive. Despite their efforts, the people cannot escape being stung, their bodies swelling up. Weak moans echo, "Help, ah," on the ground. Flowers and fruits are scattered everywhere, emanating a strange fragrance. This mixture wasn't randomly released but was deliberately done by someone. Xiaolong and Huaying stand behind a boulder, watching the bees move towards the source of the fragrance. Wit Jiang is astonished and says, "The bees are flying all to one place." Huaying nods, "Yes, it's true." She turns to Xiaolong, curiously asking, "Xiaolong, what exactly did you do?" He smiles and replies, "That's because I ordered the bees to launch a full-scale attack." She remembers the flowers and fruits he told her to prepare. "Wait, did you just crush the flowers and fruits and spread them?" She looks at the fragrance emanating from the mixture and realizes that it was the signal to order the full-scale attack. Xiaolong explains, "Pheromones are chemical signals that animals of the same species use to communicate." He emphasizes, especially social insects like ants and honeybees actively use pheromones to communicate. "So you can know in detail," he continues. "I'm not shy to explain thoroughly. The pheromone I used is the scent that bees release when initiating a full-scale attack. It's called shamanastatus." Huaying thinks of the dense swarm of bees, so the scent of this mischievous flower is just like the moment when the bees launch an attack. It's truly miraculous. Hearing her praise, he feels shy, but says, "Still, I'm amazed that you could distinguish that scent." Moreover, you smile modestly. Of course, as a physician specialized in poisons, being sensitive to fragrance is natural. Xiaolong looks straight ahead, not at her, and replies, "Yes, that's right." He points to a tree they've been waiting for days, his voice showing excitement. The queen bee has led the swarm to attack, so we should start moving in. He leads the way, stepping through the dense grass, excitedly saying, "Let's go get the queen bee's honey." In his hand is an object wrapped in cloth and tightly tied. The three of them carefully proceed forward. When they reach the base of the tree, they see a large, dark hole. The group hesitates. Zhang tries to steady her nerves, then raises her voice. "Xiaolong, it's dangerous. Let me go first to lead the way." All three enter one by one. After stepping in and looking around, the group is astonished and exclaims, "Oh, look! Wow, such a big beehive." Above them is a super large golden beehive, truly terrifying. Each cell of the hexagonal hive is perfectly built, giving a delightful feeling to look at. Zhang lights a fire to create smoke and whispers. Maybe the bees have all flown out already. Hearing a strange sound, Xiaolong glances and curiously asks, what's that? Zhang, as if she can't believe her eyes, tries to look again. Her tone is uneasy. "There's no honey. How is this possible?" Indeed, all the hive holes are completely empty. Huaying solemnly asks, "Really, there's not a single one left?" As Xiaolong says, "What do you mean?" Zhang touches her chin and replies, this has never happened before. It's really strange." Xiaolong, thinking of some possibility, shouts, "Ah, could it be?" He speaks his thoughts. "This beehive is gone. There are no eggs left." Zhang wonders if that has anything to do with the hive not having honey. He boldly hypothesizes, perhaps the bees have been preparing to leave in advance, so it seems they've swallowed all the stored honey into their stomachs. He concludes, maybe the reason is that they've sensed too many human traces nearby recently. Huaying sadly says, so that's it. To verify his words, she goes to a nearby hive, observes, and then says, "Yes, that's right. When bees decide to migrate, they stop laying eggs because they no longer have the time or ability to care for the larvae." Suddenly, his body tenses up as he sees the scene before him. Behind the hive, the back of a bee is revealed, but this bee seems quite large. He asks eerily, "Zhang, sir, if you continuously use your techniques without rest, how long can you maintain it?" He doesn't know why he's asking this, but still replies, "If running at a moderate pace, I can maintain it for about half a day." Unable to contain his curiosity, he asks, "Why do you suddenly ask about that?" At this moment, the sound of a carriage outside echoes. Xiaolong, the young master, stutters. The queen bee. Remembering the scene they just saw, he panics and urges the golden bees to return. "You must quickly leave here." Xiaolong doesn't run outside, but instead bows his head as if trying to take something. He hesitates. Wait a moment. Hearing this, Zhang urgently shouts, We have to go now. Xiaolong, young master, just give up." Huaying sees that he's dawdling, grabs his collar and says, "Xiaolong, hurry up." The carriage outside is still worried and urges them to hurry out. Xiaolong hurriedly runs following, hiding something in his chest. The moon is still bright in the sky. The three turn back to their group, panting heavily. A swollen person nearby sees this, and almost a big incident occurs. Huaying breathes out. "Luckily, we got out before the bees return." The creature in Xiaolong's chest, suffocating, also sticks his head out to breathe the fresh air. Huaying sees him holding it and is astonished, asking, "Xiaolong, what are you holding there?" He laughs. "Ha!" He raises the large, impressive bee and explains, "This is the queen of the swarm. Since there's no honey, I've brought a bee that can produce honey back here." Zhang hears this and fears the queen bee. Huaying looks at the bee trying to appear cute and hesitates. "Xiaolong, young master, could it be?" Suddenly, Zhang and Huaying's expressions change instantly. The bee in his chest screams loudly, "Bzzz!" He isn't afraid to add fuel to the fire, saying, "Also, not long from now, the bees will realize their queen has disappeared and chase after us." Behind their backs, the swarm gathers into dense black masses across a large area. He doesn't know anything else and laughs cheerfully. "Let's just run." Thus begins a dangerous chase for their lives. A crowd of people, panic-stricken and carrying the queen bee, flee with a swarm of bees chasing after them, producing a loud. Several days have passed since the deadly honeybee race began. Looking into the sparkling eyes of the queen bee, Xiaolong gently pats her head, calming her down. "Calm down a bit. Let's see, I'll take you to a place where no one can bother you." During this time, the group has reduced their sleeping time to focus all their energy on moving. Given the current situation, it's truly disastrous. While the crowd is resting, Xiaolong points far into the distance and shouts loudly. Everyone panics and follows a helpless person who says, "Ah, I can't run anymore." On the way here, some members of the Blood Red team have fallen behind completely. I'm determined this time to rely on Kung Fu to make it back properly. Suddenly, someone tumbles forward, shouting, "What? Another person has fallen behind." The people, running and worried, look back and see someone lying flat on the ground. Their teammate shouts loudly, "Xiaolong has fallen." As a result, the Blood Red team's queen has been left behind. He hurriedly urges everyone to quickly use Kung Fu and run faster, thinking to himself, if we distance ourselves from the queen bee, we probably won't be attacked anymore. He breathes heavily and asks, "Master Xiaolong, can we escape?" Xiaolong is slightly uncertain and replies, "Perhaps we can." 3 days later, despite his best efforts, Nguyen Zhang can no longer continue and collapses to the ground. He coughs and sputters, saying to the two people in front, "I'm sorry, Master Xiaolong. I can only go this far." At this moment, Xiaolong and Huanggan appear indifferent, their hair messy and disheveled. He is stunned and worries, calling out, "Boss!" After a moment of silence, Huanggan speaks up, "Xiaolong, let me carry you." Hearing this, he hesitantly refuses. "Miss Huanggan, but I can run by myself." Suddenly, Huangyan rubs her face with both hands. After recovering from the shock, her spirits brighten. She shows determination, smiling at him. "I can do it. The exit path will never abandon." At the main gate, 2 guards stand neatly dressed, holding weapons, seriously performing. Hearing footsteps echoing from afar, the 2 guards look up in confusion and murmur. Seeing the approaching figure, one exclaims in astonishment, "Oh, the miss has returned." Only 2 people can be seen struggling, their eyes darkened from sleeplessness. Xiaolong is walking while guiding Huang An. The gate guard can't believe his eyes, his mouth agape, asking, "Miss." The entire exit becomes chaotic, firing signal rockets into the air to call the entire family hierarchy immediately. The senior master and the family head hear the signal rockets and immediately open the door to run outside. The family head anxiously asks, "Is something serious happened?" Someone immediately reports, "Miss Huang An." As soon as they arrive, they see Huang An, looking pale, being supported by family members. Xiaolong is anxious, standing beside them looking truly miserable. The family head, unable to bear seeing this, doesn't dare to believe his eyes and asks. The family head hugs his daughter tightly, heartbroken, and shouts at Xiaolong, "What's going on?" Xiaolong hurriedly kneels and stammers an explanation. "Please calm down, sir. Miss Huanggan is just exhausted after 10 days of nonstop kung fu training." When he thinks of something, his tone becomes serious. "But now is not the time to talk about this. We need to go to the martial arts school immediately." The senior master is astonished and asks, "What? The martial arts school? Why?" He doesn't answer immediately, but places his hand on his chest as if trying to pull something. He embraces the queen bee, lifting her up for everyone to see. He continues, "The queen of the golden hair Wind King will soon be followed by other bees. We must go to the ancient tree at the martial arts school immediately." At this moment, the senior master can't help but laugh loudly. "Ha ha ha, this boy is truly promising. His future will definitely be remarkable." On this side, the family head's expression isn't very good. He asks, "What's wrong? Weren't you supposed to collect honey? Why did you bring the queen bee back?" Without letting him answer, the senior master hugs him by the shoulders and says, "All right, let's go." This surprises him, and he exclaims, "Huh?" He uses kung fu to embrace Xiaolong and leaps into the air, startling him. He shouts loudly, "Oh heavens!" Meanwhile, the people below hurriedly cover their faces to protect themselves from the blowing sand. Xiaolong is lifted high into the air by his embrace, making him dizzy and confused. Suddenly, he panics and shouts, "Ah!" The senior master, hearing his loud cries, worries and glances back, asking, "What's wrong?" He sees a familiar dark yellow mass approaching in the sky and hurriedly reports, "The old family and the swarm of bees are approaching in droves." Hearing this, the senior master calmly replies, "Crowded? Did you bring all of them here?" After speaking, he accelerates forward, saying, "Come on, hurry up." He experiences a sudden increase in speed and panics, shouting, "Ah!" The senior master lands roughly, causing rocks and soil to scatter everywhere. He brings him to the large ancient tree and announces, "We've arrived, Xiaolong." He quickly hugs the queen bee and rushes toward the tree in front of them. Xiaolong looks up at the massive tree and says, "Golden hair Wind King, this is the place I've mentioned. From now on, this is your home." The bees in his hand flutter their wings, making a buzzing sound. He points to the large hollow in front of him and asks, "Is everything okay?" The response is still just the sound of wings flapping. The golden hair wind king cautiously flies to the side of the tree trunk to observe. After careful observation, he turns his head to look at Xiaolong, smiling brightly. Seeing him like this, he is secretly happy, seemingly pleased that Xiaolong has met him. Seeing the swarm of bees approaching, the senior master urgently calls out, "Xiaolong, let's leave here quickly. The swarm is coming." Hearing this, he turns around and responds, "Yes, sir." As the bees fly overhead, creating a loud sound, everyone below looks up in amazement and worry. The golden hair wind king sees the swarm and is instantly joyful. Continuously flapping his wings and buzzing loudly, he quickly leads the swarm into the base of the tree he just observed, completing his inspection. The senior master looks at the scene before him, continually exclaiming, "Oh my, I've never witnessed anything like this in my life." Xiaolong also looks on and sighs, "Ah!" Seeing the bees flying in and out of the tree trunk, he sighs in relief. The golden hair wind king has succeeded in being captured. A bee is seen sticking its tongue into water contained in a wooden. Watching the bees gather in groups to drink water, he is pleased that the golden hair wind king has been exhausted from chasing after a little sugar water to regain strength. It's often said that sharing a meal fosters relationships, and kindness is nurtured through it. Luckily, there's something similar to sugar here. Fortunately, the people outside stand aside, observing happily and commenting, "They're eating so well, and they look so cute up close." Seeing the golden hair wind king happily drinking sugar water, he is secretly glad. Doing this should reduce their vigilance a bit. If they realize I'm their master, that's even better. Suddenly he shouts, "Ah!" The senior master hears this and asks, "What's wrong?" He hesitantly asks, "What about Miss Huan?" The senior master glances sarcastically and asks, "Now you remember? You realize from the tired appearance of the young lady?" He becomes even more hesitant and continues, "She was so exhausted that I had to bring the little girl to her mother for care. But I didn't expect you to make her use kung fu for 10 days nonstop. You didn't think that, Xiaolong?" Hearing this, Xiaolong doesn't dare to face him and shyly responds, "Yes, sir. I'm really sorry. I only slept about 2 hours each day. The rest was all running." Yes, indeed. At this moment, the senior master suddenly remembers something and asks Xiaolong, "Remember the people you brought along? Where's the blood-red team now?" At this moment, he is sweating profusely, his face drenched with sweat. "I'm a bit unsure, but I guess they might have." Hearing this, the senior master can only close his eyes and laugh, "Ha ha!" Following the delegation, the blood-red team was later safely brought back into the family's embrace. In Huanggan's room, warm sunlight streams through each window. After hearing Xiaolong recount everything, she is happy, as it seems the golden hair wind king has regained his strength. "That's lucky." Xiaolong also smiles and responds, "Yes, Miss Huang'an." Thinking about the bees, he adds, "Now they follow the family into the mountain. Currently, they are extracting honey from the poisonous flowers in the mountain." "I see," she nods. "Oh heavens, they look so adorable." Suddenly, a loud voice interrupts the conversation. "Mr. Xiaolong! Mr. Xiaolong!" Xiaolong glances outside and responds, "What's the matter?" He hurriedly reminds Baidu to maintain the rule of only holding tightly onto the door with both hands and urges him, "We need to go outside for." He breathes heavily, takes a deep breath, and continues, "The golden hair wind king's condition seems strange. They look like they're searching for something." Xiaolong contemplates, He quickly runs outside, with Huang'an following behind. High above, a few golden hair wind kings are already waiting. Seeing the bees scattered above his head, he astonishedly asks, "Really?" The bees hear his voice and immediately all look towards him. The sound of wings flapping fills the air. Seeing them continuously clinging to his head and body, he is confused. "Huh? Are you guys okay?" Huang'an also looks worried. "Miss Xiaolong, are you all right?" The swarm of bees still relentlessly drags his arms. Watching them bite tightly onto his clothes and trying hard to pull him up, he anxiously asks, "Why are you guys doing this?" Suddenly, his feet begin to lift off the ground. He can only helplessly laugh bitterly. "Ah!" People on the ground look up to see Xiaolong being dragged away by the swarm, moving further and further away. Huang'an opens her mouth in surprise and calls. The swarm drags him to the base of the ancient tree and then releases him. The sound of wings flapping loudly rings in his ears as he staggers and lands on the ground, exclaiming. His eyes widen in astonishment at the sight before him. He is stunned and asks, "What happened to your bee colony?" A bee flies to the back of him and uses its strength to push him inside. He follows along, moving while smiling. It's okay, I understand you want me to come in. As he enters, he rolls his eyes and looks inside, exclaiming, "Oh!" Looking at the neatly arranged golden honeycomb cells, he can't help but think, the hive is quite well built, and the diligent honey gathering is already underway. A bee slowly flies closer to him, glancing around and murmuring, So this is the queen bee, he realizes, seeing her gaze at him with immense affection. She flies to land on his arm, gently flapping his wings, and softly asks, "Do you want me to lift you up?" In response, he hears stronger flapping sounds. However, the swarm becomes denser, covering his face to the point of distorting his features. He has a headache, thinking, "These guys are clinging to me so much that I can't move." He lowers his head, lifting the queen bee as she desires. He only sees her big, sparkling eyes looking up at him. The queen bee slowly closes her eyes, extending her front legs to touch his face. Xiaolong, seeing her demeanor, is astonished and shouts, "Ha! Ha!" He tried to drill, but it was too late. The queen bee approached his face closely, causing his face to flush red for a moment. He silently groaned in his head. Ugh! He felt his lips touch something soft, his entire body becoming warm, his eyes becoming blurry, and his mind spinning. Instinctively, he swallowed hard, astonished to discover that something was overwhelming him. A swarm of bees flew around, watching as the queen bee his lips parted in the middle, and bubbles of air appeared. He hurriedly released her and breathed heavily. Phew! He placed his hand on his stomach and covered his mouth, blushing as he pointed at her and stammered, "You, Queen Bee. This is my first time, so what exactly are you doing?" He felt his entire body lose control, filled with horror. His body went limp, collapsing to the ground with a thud. His eyes sparkled as he lifted his head, searching for the angry queen bee, clenching his teeth. He saw her seemingly smiling at him, not understanding and wondering if she had given him. After the intimate contact with the queen bee, Long lay curled up on the ground, his face showing pain. He struggled to groan, "Ugh!" feeling his face become hot, with white foam flowing from his mouth. Behind him, he felt an uncomfortable, strange itchiness enveloping his entire body. He rolled over but couldn't alleviate the suffocating sensation within him. His vision became blurry, mucus continuously flowed from his nose and mouth, and he could hear his heart pounding loudly. He reached out towards the queen bee, struggling to groan. "Humph. Did you give me something to eat?" As his eyes gradually closed, he saw her looking at him innocently and called out. Before his eyes fully shut, he heard Huang'an's worried voice calling, "Long, Long." Then the image of her calling out, "Master Thigh of the family, Long, something is wrong." He seems to have swallowed a very powerful elixir. His vision went completely dark. He heard Huang'an panic, "Long, wake up." Then Taithungjia said, "I will guide the energy to help you." When he opened his eyes, he saw Huang'an holding a cloth, preparing to place it on his forehead. Seeing him awake, she happily said, "Long, you're awake, aren't you?" He sat up, rubbed his head, looked around, and asked, Where am I?" The lady replied, "It's the medicine hall of the medicine sect." She gently swept her hair behind her ears, and then recounted everything. Seeing Long being taken to King Kim Mao, how she and the family hurried over, but when they arrived, he had already lost consciousness, so they brought him here. She asked, "Do you remember anything that happened?" He hesitated and replied, Recalling the situation, he remembered holding his face with a troubled mind after his first kiss with her. Seeing his condition like that, Huang'an worriedly asked, "Long, is your master okay? Is there anything unusual with his body?" Seeing him silent, she suggested, "Should we call the family?" He hurriedly stopped her. No need. It's just me." Upon mentioning this, he fell silent again and took a deep breath. He gathered his thoughts and said, "The queen bee forced me to eat her food. Maybe that's why this happened." Huang'an curiously asked, "What did you eat?" He seemed unsure and replied, I'm not sure of the exact name, but if I could name it, I'd call it King Fong's Essence." She questioned, "Fong's Essence? What's that?" He smiled and nodded. "Exactly. Worker bees collect nectar and pollen to survive. Only worker bees, those who work their whole lives, eat nectar and pollen." She continued, "What about the queen bee?" He explained, "From birth to death, she only consumes King Fong's essence produced by the worker bees." Now he realized why the queen bee forced him to eat King Fong's essence. It is the royal jelly. Huang'an understood. So that's the lifelong food of the queen bee. Thinking about it, his voice suddenly became cheerful. But King Fong's essence has another special effect. She heard this and asked, "What effect?" He excitedly explained, Normally, worker bees live just over a month, but the queen bee, thanks to King Fong's essence, can live 60 times longer. Isn't that extraordinary? She was amazed and tried to stop him. Long, calm down. She blushed, coughed lightly to cover her embarrassment, and said, "Ah, I see. The question has been answered." She continued, "The internal cultivation method you've been practicing is the 5 poison primordial technique. Although it's only a basic method, it can't fully absorb all the energy from the elixir." Huang'an sighed softly. "So King Fong's royal jelly has an effect equivalent to 2 victories in internal cultivation, right? You've achieved 60 times the effectiveness, and your master has obtained 50. Hearing her speak, she congratulated him. "Congratulations on your enlightenment." He was astonished and couldn't speak. 10. At this moment, Huang'an hesitated and she covered her embarrassment on her face with a cloth and said, "Later, look into the silver mirror once. It seems King Fong's essence has other effects as well." He heard this, opened his eyes wide in astonishment, and repeated, "Another Long gently touched his face, wondering, "Silver mirror?" Indeed, when he looked at himself in the mirror, he was stunned. He raised his hand to his cheek softly. He vaguely understood that royal jelly has such effects. What? That country bumpkin from Hainam is gone? Long gently pressed his fingertip to his cheek, feeling his features become more delicate, his skin softer, resembling that of a woman's. Thinking about something, sweat droplets formed on his face. His face flushed so much that he forgot to pull his finger away from his cheek. Imagining himself as a more feminine version, he smiled brightly and introduced, "Hello, I am Wei Ling." He panicked, covering his face, and wondered, how can the queen bee's royal jelly eat like? He hurriedly bowed his head, groped to unzip his pants, remained silent, holding his breath, not daring to make a sound. Then he pulled down his pants to check if his subordinate was still there. After checking, he lay flat on the ground, lifting his head to look at the ceiling, and sighed in relief. Good, she's still where she should. He remembered Hoang'an saying that if the family hadn't guided the energy, something big would have happened. He thought to himself, maybe I should go and thank her, but almost endangered his life before being saved. Today was a rather cold day with foggy weather, making the distant mountains appear hidden. The visibility was significantly obscured, and he could only see the treetops at the nearest distance. Long walked along his usual path, but he felt something strange because everyone kept staring at him. Seeing the ladies look at him and smile, he silently speculated, "Today, I suddenly feel unfamiliar gazes. Is it because my internal cultivation has increased?" He hurriedly ran like a ghost, thinking to himself, "First, I must escape from here." Behind him echoed the loud laughter of the ladies. At the entrance of the Four Rivers restaurant, he turned out. Xiaolong stood hesitantly outside the door, unable to proceed inside. Ko stood lurking outside the gate. He could only see the dining table, which was now full of colorful dishes with all kinds of flavors. At this moment, everyone had sat down at the table. The family members were successively serving more dishes to the madam. While absent-mindedly turned, the madam carefully observed him and exclaimed, "Oh, your face looks brighter than before." Then she inquired, showing concern, "Is your health better now?" Xiaolong bowed his head and folded his hands, replying, "Yes, madam. I apologize for causing you worry." The madam clapped her hands sincerely, happily saying, "It's nothing. If you have a miraculous encounter, it's..." After speaking, she turned to the young lady and teased, "Oh my, look at this complexion. Huang'an must love it." Huang'an blushed deeply and awkwardly replied, "Oh, maternal lady." Then she hesitantly patted the drum. "Come on, Xiaolong, sit down." Amid the joyful laughter of the madam, Ko gently responded, "Yes?" Everyone sat down in their places. The family members were still bringing up the last dishes. While the family members were serving tea, the family head took interest and opened his mouth to ask about Xiaolong. "Are you feeling better?" Ko nodded obediently. "Yes, madam. I apologize for causing you worry." Then he respectfully continued, "Thank you, sir. I heard that you have examined my health." The family head smiled and said, "Is that so? If you've had a miraculous encounter." At this moment, the family head interjected, "Now please tell us what happened." He could not hide his curiosity. "I've heard about the Fenghuang chap from Hoang'an. What exactly happened?" "You don't know where to start," Ko said, habitually touching his face, then spoke. The story is, you remember our first kiss?" He closed his eyes and said, "Maybe because the queen bee just laid eggs, the king bee of Kim Mao Feng Wang tried to repay the favor to you. Because of that, I was dragged back to the hive and suddenly granted the title of..." Then Ko cheerfully concluded, "I think everything that has happened stems from this." The madam covered her mouth and exclaimed, "This is so strange. The family head sighed. Oh, even animals of the mid-tier know how to repay favors. Then he suggested, by the way, could you try to find more Fenghuang chap? If possible, it would be very useful for our family. The honey from the Kim Mao Fenghuang is already quite useful, but if it's Fenghuang chap, it would definitely be extremely helpful. The madam was only concerned about the cosmetic benefits of Fenghuang chap, so she urged, brother-in-law, could you find more Fenghuang chap? Seeing everyone's eyes focused on him, Go gently coughed. Hoangan turned to him and asked, oh, really? Xiaolong, can you find it again? He closed his eyes and gently replied, Remembering what he knew, Ko thought to himself, if it's just regular bees, they need to build many hives for the queen bee, known as Huangdai, and utilize worker bees to collect royal jelly. Remembering his pathetic appearance running away from the swarm, yelling, Xiaolong Gongzi, isn't this situation completely different? Ko speculated. If I try this with the Kim Mao Feng Wang, who is smart, he would surely be transformed into a hive immediately. Thinking about the innocent appearance of the queen bee, Ko pondered. Originally, royal jelly is food for the larvae created by worker bees, yet we are directly fed by the queen bee. So is this substance completely different? After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth. Here, I'll be straightforward. It probably can't be done. The family head heard this and urgently asked, why not? For what reason? The madam was also anxious. Brother-in-law, why not? Ko replied, even if people can eat it, would anyone dare to? At this moment, the family head was just beginning to speculate. Is it the strange taste or the smell? He gently scratched his head and shook it. It's not like that. Then he gave a shocking answer. This Fenghuang chap is secreted from the mouth of the queen bee. It seems it needs to be directly transferred by the queen bee. Fearing that people wouldn't understand, he explained further, it's like kissing. You have to have mouth-to-mouth contact. The substance from the queen bee has to enter the mouth. The family head was astonished, his mouth agape. What? Contacting with the queen bee? The madam also stammered. What do you mean? The family head had to give up hope and said, if that's the case, it seems impossible to find more, unless it's Xiaolong whom the Kim Mao Feng Wang favors. For others, it's impossible. Suddenly, chopsticks fell on the table, making a noise that attracted everyone's attention. Hoangan didn't look at him, but in a deep voice asked, do you have to contact with... She couldn't help but cover her mouth, glanced at Xiaolong, and asked, do you have to have mouth contact with the Kim Mao Feng Wang? In the quiet late night, only the gentle moonlight shines down, casting a shimmering layer of light on the water. A scarred hand clenches tightly, the gruesome green veins bulging with each grip. A muscular man sits thoughtfully, seemingly pondering something. This person is none other than Volam Minchu Quin Huang Chu Chonghok. Suddenly, a gentle female voice from outside breaks his train of thought. Minchu, I've brought tea for Chu Chonghok. He looks up and says, all right, come in. Entering is a graceful woman with a charming beauty spot below her mouth. She carefully bows her head, holding the tea. Chu Chonghok glances at the woman and gently says, I've prepared Taisun Baklo tea. He clasps his hands in front of his chest and sighs. This is the homeland tea for me. The woman pours the tea while saying, yes, this is the famous tea. Chu Chonghok brings the cup close to his mouth, slightly opening his lips to prepare to drink. Suddenly, a hurried voice is heard from outside. Ji-Cat Hao, a dignified young man, enters, clasping his hands. I apologize for disturbing you while you're resting, Master Min. After speaking, he reports, actually, there is urgent news from the Susuyan route, so I thought it best to inform you immediately. Chu Chonghok calmly responds, it's all right. If the strategist is in a hurry to come, it must be important. Please proceed. Jia-Cat Hao steps closer and reaches into his sleeve to retrieve something. He places a rolled paper on the table and speaks, Huyet Thu La Shat Chak Van Duong. Upon hearing the shocking news that the Jia family has obtained his secret copy along with the Huit Thu Duk manual, Chu Chonghok cannot contain himself. He slams his hand on the table. Too angry, what? Due to his strong grip, his hand trembles. He tightly clenches his other hand and grits his teeth, demanding, how and where did you obtain that formidable Huit Thu Duk manual? Jia-Cat Ho bows his head and replies, previously, Trak Van Dung was hit by the palm of Van Duk Thun Quan, causing him to become blind. He drifted to Hainam and has been hiding there ever since. As if remembering something, he seems interested and adds, furthermore, there's a very interesting story. According to intelligence, the gang leader Trak Van Dung was defeated by a young swordsman along with a poison user. Chu Chonghok is astonished and asks, What do you mean, a young swordsman and a poison user? He sits down opposite Chu Huk, then fans himself and continues. Listening to it, it seems like a very interesting story. It's also a story that you will find intriguing. The woman remains standing in the room, hearing Jia Kat Ho excitedly say, if I elaborate. At this moment, the head of the Jia family, Dung Jiatu Swin, along with all main and secondary branches, are present. After hearing the report, an elderly leader nods and responds, yes, Master Jia. Another elderly leader angrily says, so there are people who dare to sell our martial arts sex information to others? The elder next to me continues, how audacious. I never. Xiaolong notices that everyone's attitude is different from before. So he turns to Huang'an and whispers, I'm surprised you're not harsh with the musicians or something. She hears him and laughs. Of course, Xiaolong. Fear you don't understand well enough. Let me explain further. They dare to harm the family's reputation, so even the elders in our clan are furious. After all, they are family members. The master gently closes his eyes, bows his head, and makes a decision. I have asked Bai Sak to verify the information about them. We should have news soon. I plan to personally go to Vin. The elderly leader worries and asks, so how do you intend to handle it? The master replies after careful calculation. First, we need to use Dit Hon Dok, Hua Huit Dok, and Duan Chang Dok. Listening to you briefly, the blood will burn, the internal organs will melt, and the person will be engulfed in pain as if their soul is leaving their body. I will finish. Xiaolong opens his mouth and says, the Kuk Tai method? The master turns around and orders Nguyen Zhang to summon the extermination team immediately. I will set out at once. He bows respectfully. Yes, Master Jia. The extermination team is quickly assembled. At this moment, everyone is forming Team 5, standing in the courtyard opposite the master. Before leaving, he doesn't forget to instruct Xiaolong, his son-in-law, I will be departing. You should rest and take good care of your health. Xiaolong clasps his hands and bows his head. Understood, Master. The musicians reply confidently, be careful. He hears this and confidently says, careful? Why should I be careful? It's them who need to watch out. After speaking, he and Team 5 swiftly depart. The hearty voices still echo loudly, let's go! We will punish them 100-fold in retaliation and retribution. Everyone responds in unison, yes, Master Gia. Remembering the people dressed in black who are carefully concealed, he curiously asks Xiao Thu Huang'an, are those the extermination team? Why are they here? But this is the first time I've seen them. She immediately replies, they are specialized in handling. Huang'an smiles and adds, mainly dealing with eliminating others. That's why they're called the extermination team. Hearing this, he breaks out in a cold sweat, thinking, it's not just simple dangerous task. Suddenly, someone approaches from behind and speaks in a hoarse voice. Both turn their heads to see who it is. He clasps his hands and bows to Xiaolong. May I introduce the leaders of the Radung sect? The elderly leader steps forward and says hoarsely, yes, I heard you've had a fateful encounter. He doesn't show any arrogance and responds humbly, yes, respected leaders. In his mind, he can't help but wildly speculate, could it be thanks to Kim Maofengvung Loong Chua? The elderly leader covering his mouth hoarsely continues, we've come to you because we have something we need your assistance with. Xiaolong is still confused and asks again, what is that? He continues, is it the secret of Kim Maofengvung? Xiaolong says, let me finish my sentence. The elderly leader quickly interrupts, no, not that. Could it be you think we're greedy for that? Yes, that's right. All elixirs and treasures in this world have predetermined owners, don't they? Seeing that the two are talking endlessly without getting to the main topic, he hesitantly asks, so what is the matter? The two elderly leaders look awkwardly at each other, not knowing how to proceed. The leading elderly leader he slightly blushes and whispers, isn't this about the Kukdam Hoang? He whispers closer. I heard that it was created by the son-in-law, so the authority belongs to you. At this moment, he seems to understand. He grins and laughs a long laugh. Then, he takes out 3 Kukdam Hoang pills, playfully showing them in his hand. He laughs and says, haha, I'm also trying to adapt to the Radung sect. There are many difficulties, but if the leaders can support a bit, nothing is impossible. The elderly leaders also relax and laugh loudly. Yes, our son-in-law really knows what he's doing. From now on, we will fully support you. Rest assured and live peacefully within the clan. The master just opened the door and saw a joyful scene, like during the Lunar New Year. He speaks, What are you all discussing that's so cheerful? The sudden sound makes everyone stop for about 5 seconds. The elderly leader was just about to receive the medicine, but chokes on a sip, coughing loudly. Everyone quickly places their hands on Xiaolong's shoulders. Extinguish the fire? Ah, we were just chatting to strengthen the bond with our son-in-law. He is also confused and says, of course, respected leaders. The master is pleased and laughs. Ha! It seems that in the end, you all recognized Xiaolong's true value. Huangyan, her forehead covered in sweat, looks at them. The group bursts into laughter. Of course, respected master. Suddenly, a worried voice echoes, Master Jia, there's a serious issue. Hearing this, the master turns and asks, what has happened? The other person promptly reports, the Lord of Dungjatu Suin is on the brink of death. Everyone becomes horrified. The elderly leader can't help but shout, what? Xiaolong urgently asks, did he follow the instructions correctly? The other person hesitates a bit before responding, well, he couldn't hide it. The other person honestly replies, after the Lord of Dungjatu Suin saw the effectiveness of the medicine, he added new supplements and used dosages many times. Hearing this, he breaks out in a cold sweat and exclaims inwardly, oh my God. The master, with a headache, raises his hand to support himself and says, we must go there immediately. Before leaving, he instructs Xiaolong, you are the only man left in the house. Please protect the ladies, understood? Xiaolong obediently replies, yes, Master Jia. The master quickly performs his martial arts and leaves in a hurry. He watches him hurriedly leave and wonders, what's there to worry about? Night has fallen, and all the main buildings of the Ra-Dung sect are brightly lit. Huangyan sits beside Xiaolong and asks, how is your learning of the Tendok Songwin Gong going this time? He is a bit unsure and says, compared to the beginning, it's not as difficult now. He thinks to himself, if the 5 Dokuingwin Gong felt like a large flow of energy circulating in the body, then the Tendok Songwin Gong is like 2 streams of energy working together like a 2-cylinder engine. Huangyan is slightly pleased and announces, now I should have a certain level of immunity to common toxins. She continues, furthermore, I can directly emit energy outward or infuse it into objects. He is astonished and asks, really? After trying to muster determination, he tightly presses his lips and says, let me try it once. Seeing the figure before him slowly stand up, he holds the dagger with his index and thumb, then focuses his spirit. He murmurs to himself, transferring internal energy from left to right, creating 2 clockwise rotating energy loops. Gradually, a blue aura appears beneath his feet and swiftly envelops his entire body. Xiaolong slowly opens his eyes, which now have a faint blue hue. He thinks to himself, when this energy fills my body. As the sound projects out, it echoes in his head. He uses one leg as a pivot and forcefully throws the dagger toward the dagger, carrying the blue energy, slices through the air and a loud boom sounds as the dagger precisely hits the center of the figure's abdomen, causing several limbs to scatter. He joyfully calls to the young lady Huang'an, I did it successfully. Huang'an also smiles brightly and says, Xiaolong, fantastic! You have correctly infused energy into the dagger. A group of unfamiliar people dressed in black hide nearby, their eyes wide as they watch the dagger pierce the figure, and they whisper among themselves. One says, have we been detected? Do we need to eliminate them? Another quickly counters, no, it seems like just a coincidence. The other person, holding a book, lowers his voice even more. Though it's just a copy, the Huitudok manual has been obtained by us. Our mission is accomplished. We need to leave quickly before any trouble arises and return to our sect. The man can't hide his smug smile and says, haha, these fools are so complacent and unaware of the vigilance in the martial school. Thanks to that, I was able to escape easily. Suddenly, a strange scent wafts by, making him suspicious and mutters, He whispers to his comrades, is there a sweet fragrance emanating from somewhere? The group looks around curiously, searching. As they lift their heads, they suddenly notice a bee also staring intently at them. The bee's expression seems troubled, its buzzing also carrying a sense of anger. In the unexpected darkness, a loud, piercing scream echoed, tearing apart the night. Tio Long was astonished and cried out, what's going on? Hoangun turned her gaze toward the source of the sound, suspecting that someone was here. Behind the trees, indeed, there was a group of people dressed in black, suspicious attire. They were terrified and shouted loudly, ah! Why are there bees here? The same attire and suspicious demeanor led Hoang to conclude that they were in trouble. For the safety of the Hoa family, Hoangun decided to take the opportunity to jump towards them. She didn't forget to order the person beside her, Tiao Long, to shoot the intruders or follow Huang Ngun, the young lady. The black-clad intruders, seeing the dangerous situation, hurriedly called their comrades to retreat. Another one was bitten by a bee and could only scream for help. "Get this thing off me, you bastard!" The remaining two did not stay to help, but instead unleashed their secret technique, firing towards Huang Ngun from a distance. She ran up. She hurriedly took out a long black whip with countless sharp thorns appearing along its length. Huang Ngun swung the whip powerfully towards the opponents, but they were agile and jumped up to dodge. This left her astonished as they managed to avoid her whip. The one bitten by the bee, unable to escape, decided to stay and hold her back while counterattacking. He drew his sword and rushed towards her, shouting, "Die!" Tiao Long could only stand back and shout loudly, reminding Huang Ngun to be careful, her voice showing worry. The black-clad intruder, despite being bitten by a bee, did not relent and swung his sword. Huang Ngun, being a master, held both ends of her thorned whip up to block the sword strike while glancing disdainfully at her opponent. Then she forcefully threw the thorned whip at his face, causing him to be utterly stunned. Not giving him a chance to counterattack, she continuously swung the thorned whip towards him. At this moment, the bee released him and flew high into the sky. Tiao Long saw the black-clad intruder lying unconscious on the ground and worriedly asked, "Young lady Huang Ngun, are you all right?" Huang Ngun calmly collected her whip and replied, "I'm fine." Suddenly, the black-clad intruder let out a scream and then went silent, his body emitting black smoke with his mouth agape. Tiao Long, seeing this, was terrified and exclaimed, "Who is this guy? Is he dead?" Internally, she couldn't help but curse. "What the hell is this?" Huang Ngun bowed down to look at the intruder, who had malicious intentions. Seeing his grayish-blue skin and other signs, she concluded that he had been poisoned and seemed to be hiding something. The torches lighting up the entire exit shone brightly, and sounds echoed, indicating that intruders were trying to capture them again. After gathering her team, Huang Ngun seriously ordered, "We will immediately arrange a tracking team and start pursuing. Tiao Long, go with me and Captain Huyet Doc." In the quiet late night within the forest, the flickering flames looked like fireflies, suddenly dimming and brightening. Continuous shouts echoed. The group relentlessly pursued. Captain Huyet Doc shouted loudly, "They're still running, but they haven't gone far. We must catch them at all costs." Feeling that his own speed was too slow, Tiao Long took out his corn duster, made a decision, and said, "Let's go, my double-cylinder engine." However, as his foot just touched the ground, he slipped down. His entire body fell into a pit, causing him to scream in panic, "Ouch! Ouch!" Captain Huyet Doc heard the scream and quickly turned around, calling out, "Sir!" He and another person turned back, pulled him up, and worriedly asked if he was all right. Tiao Long struggled to climb up and said, "Thank you, brother. I thought I was done for." However, he felt something was wrong. He turned around and looked behind, suspiciously and quietly. He saw behind him a swarm of green and red snakes intertwining. His entire body went cold, and he broke into a cold sweat, internally panicking. "What the heck is this? Snakes?" Captain Huyet Doc was also sweating profusely. After looking for a moment, he commented, "It seems to be a snake den. Snakes usually gather where there's strong yin energy, especially this season. They're unusually aggressive. Be careful." Contrary to his worried expression, Tiao Long seemed somewhat amused and muttered, "Indeed, they're all young." Each snake stared at him intently, their mouths wide open as if trying their best to intimidate the group. He felt it was strange. Usually, the water and striped tiger snakes aren't this ferocious. After saying that, he awkwardly looked at everyone and said, "We're running late, and it looks like it's about to rain. Hurry, Captain Huyet Doc." They had lost precious time, and the pursuers were still running at full speed, chasing them. Seeing the light ahead, the leader shouted loudly, "Over there! Catch them!" Captain Huyet Doc turned back and pointed in another direction, delegating the task to the other side. The three black-clad intruders grimaced, fully alert as they saw the people chasing. In the dark night, heavy rain poured down, and at this moment, a loud thunderclap echoed. Both sides stared at each other, with their forces clearly evident. The man in charge, with a deep voice, ordered to tighten their formation. Captain Huyet Doc replied, "Everyone, no escape routes left." He spoke, then he and his group reached into their jackets to draw their weapons. Everyone quickly drew their weapons, and the gang of dark-clothed men were not afraid at all, pulling out their swords and blades. The two sides struggled for a moment, Then the person at the front of the departing side shouted loudly, and on the other side knew that fighting was the only way to survive. A man swung his sword to strike the dark-clothed man, but he blocked it with his dual blades. The man beside him sneered, saying, "You deep-rooted pests." Another man rushed to support, shouting, "Clear the way quickly," then swung a blade at the man, causing him to fall backward. The person behind panicked, shouting loudly, "Be careful." Suddenly, a beam of light shot toward the dark-clothed man, preventing him from reacting. The young man who just launched the attack then swept his arm horizontally over the dark-clothed man's head again. This time, he managed to duck in. Finally, the young man threw a thick blade toward the dark-clothed man. It turned out that the recent moves were part of the Three Shadows technique, a famous 3 consecutive thick blades were thrown toward the dark-clothed man, causing him to continuously step back. He tried his best to jump up to avoid a blade coming at his feet. However, another blade seemed to anticipate his intention, thrusting directly into his chest. A stream of bright red blood spurted out He hurriedly put his hand over his chest to hold the blood, while Kubai cursed, "You damned lucky bastard." Kubai stared at the opponent, his voice revealing regret. "Consider yourself lucky because the rain has neutralized the poison on my darts." The wounded man held his wound tightly, cursing the damn bastard. Another dark-clothed man was also knocked down. Tiolong took charge of guarding the subdued dark-clothed man. Kubai and the group stared intently at the remaining. At this moment, a strange sound rang out, attracting everyone's attention. "You vermin, how dare you gather in such numbers?" Kubai, alert, shouted, "Who is it?" A man descended from the sky, and with just one strike, a huge boulder shattered into many pieces. It was an old man with a fierce face. Red light emanating from his eyes further revealed his cruelty. Sensing his formidable aura, Kubai spoke up, reminding everyone, "He's a master. Retreat quickly." His entire body emanated a dim red light as the old man let out a bizarre, sinister laugh. Stopping his laughter, the old man asked, "Did the wounded, dark-clothed man get it?" The man took out a book hidden in his chest cavity and carefully replied, "It's not the original, but a copy recorded by the Tao sect." Tiolong, who had been watching from afar and overheard this, quickly turned remembering what his senior master had said, that only villains would look at this. He became worried and spoke up. "Huh? That means?" He was internally panicked, thinking it was a copy of the malicious book that the Jia family had read before. He hurriedly shouted to the person in front, reminding the fighter, "Kubai, that's the Bloodmaster Poison Manual." Upon hearing the name, Kubai's attitude didn't change. He seemed somewhat worried, thinking, "It's a copy of the manual?" He was sweating profusely, gritting his teeth and cursing at the evil bastards. Seeing the indifferent attitude of his opponent, Kubai couldn't help but continue cursing. What kind of person desires something so sinister? Hurry and reveal your identity. Ignoring the cursing, the old man simultaneously flipped through the book and smiled contentedly. "Just as I suspected, since it's a copy, it has the techniques but lacks the essential moves. Anyway, that's sufficient." After a quick glance, the old man closed the book and the cover, then gave orders to the dark-clothed man. Although it was somewhat rushed, there was no better way to announce their return. "Huit Vin, I allow you to use the martial arts of our sect." It turned out that the dark-clothed man's name was Huit Vin. Upon hearing the order to leave no one alive, he clasped his hands and bowed his head. Then, he lowered his hand toward the dark-clothed man lying on the ground. Life or death unclear. The blood on the dark-clothed man suddenly vaporized into the air, releasing a strong stench all around. Seeing this bizarre scene, Tiolong held his head and shouted loudly, "What's going on?" Kubai hesitated and said, "That move." In the palm of the dark-clothed man's hand, spiritual energy was condensing, and the blood around it was thickening. It gradually gathered into his palm. The group realized with a sound of a sword being drawn, accompanied by black blood, it fell to the ground. He embraced his wound, which was gradually healing thanks to the old man's magic. At this moment, he laughed coldly and said mockingly, "Yes, you." His hands with long, sharp claws were condensing red blood energy. The old man proudly introduced, "I am none other than the elder of the blood sect, Huit Ung, ruler of the blood basin." "Is that the real name?" The old man stared intently as Tiolong assessed. "You look good." He rubbed his two hands together. With a mouthful of sharp teeth, saliva dripped out. The old man licked his lips hungrily. "It's been too long since I've tasted someone with blood like yours."